Most people think Hogwarts goes quiet after lights out, but they're dead wrong. The castle's most enchanting secrets only emerge when students should be sleeping. What if I told you there are magical moments happening right now that could change how you fall asleep forever? Tonight, you'll discover what you've been missing. Platform 9 3/4 doesn't exist on any official London King's Cross station map. Muggles walk straight past the barrier between platforms 9 and 10 without a second glance. But for wizarding families rushing through the station with trunks full of spellbooks and caged owls, that solid brick wall becomes their gateway to an entirely different world. The trick isn't running at the wall and hoping for the best. Well, actually it kind of is. First-year students often hesitate at the barrier, watching older kids disappear straight through what looks like solid stone. Parents give encouraging pushes while siblings snicker from behind loaded trolleys. The magical barrier recognizes wizarding blood and simply parts. 1 second you're staring at brick, the next you're standing on a platform that shouldn't physically fit in the space it occupies. Then there's the Hogwarts Express itself. This isn't some ordinary train that happens to carry wizards. The Scarlet steam engine has been making the same journey since 1830, and every September 1st, it carries hundreds of students on a route that stretches over 200 miles from London deep into the Scottish Highlands. The journey takes most of the day, winding through countryside that gradually shifts from English farmland to rugged Scottish terrain. But here's what makes the trip truly magical beyond just the destination. The trolley witch has been selling sweets on this exact train for over a century. She's the same witch, not a replacement or descendant. Students pile chocolate frogs, Bertie Bott's every flavor beans, and pumpkin pasties onto their compartment tables while the countryside rolls past their windows. The chocolate frogs actually hop around before you eat them, which tends to surprise Muggle-born students on their first ride. First years spend most of the journey in a state of nervous excitement that's almost painful to watch. They've read about Hogwarts in books, heard stories from older siblings, but nothing really prepares them for their first glimpse of the castle. Some try on their new robes too early, and spend hours fidgeting with unfamiliar fastenings. Others practice simple spells they've memorized, usually unsuccessfully since they haven't been taught proper wand technique yet. The train compartments become temporary social laboratories where lifelong friendships form and house loyalties begin taking shape. Students sort themselves by personality long before the sorting hat gets involved. The confident ones gravitate toward each other, while the bookish kids find their own corners to discuss theoretical magic. Makes sense, right? These compartment conversations often predict which house students will join later that evening. What's fascinating is how the journey itself serves as a transition between worlds. Students board the train as children leaving their families, but something changes during those long hours of travel. By the time they're approaching Hogwarts, they've begun transforming into young witches and wizards ready to claim their place in the magical world. The Scottish Highlands outside the windows grow more dramatic as the day progresses. Ancient forests stretch endlessly in every direction, broken by locks that reflect the changing sky. Muggle villages appear occasionally, but they seem smaller and more distant as the train carries its passengers deeper into magical territory. The very landscape feels different here, charged with centuries of accumulated magic from the school ahead. And the weird part is how time seems to stretch during the journey. Hours pass, but it doesn't feel tedious. Conversations flow, friendships spark, and anticipation builds at exactly the right pace. The train arrives at Hogsmeade Station just as dusk settles over the mountains, creating perfect dramatic lighting for first year's initial view of their new home. Well, almost perfect. The timing isn't coincidental. The Hogwarts Express operates on magical scheduling that adjusts for weather, delays, and seasonal changes in daylight. It always arrives at that magical hour when day transitions to night, when the castle's windows begin glowing like earthbound stars against the darkening sky. Let's not forget that this isn't just transportation, it's tradition. Generations of witches and wizards have taken this exact journey, pressed their faces to these same windows, felt this same mixture of excitement and terror as the train carried them toward their destiny. Parents wave goodbye knowing their children are joining a legacy that stretches back over 1,000 years. The final approach reveals why Muggle maps show nothing but empty highland wilderness in this area. Powerful concealment charms hide Hogwarts from non-magical eyes, but as the Hogwarts Express rounds the final bend, those protective spells recognize their passengers and allow the castle to materialize in the distance. But that first glimpse deserves more than a rushed description from a train window. The real magic happens when students actually see what's been waiting for them across that dark Scottish lake. As the Hogwarts Express rounds that final bend, first-year students press their faces against the windows, What they see next changes everything. There it is. Hogwarts Castle, perched impossibly on a towering cliff like something straight out of a fairy tale. But this isn't just any castle, this is home. The massive structure seems to grow right out of the rocky cliff face, as if the ancient stones decided to reach toward the sky centuries ago, and never stopped. Below, a vast lake stretches into darkness, its black waters so still they might as well be made of obsidian. The contrast is striking, all that solid, ancient stone above, and the mysterious depths below. Now here's where things get interesting. Those protective spells surrounding Hogwarts, they're not just for show. The castle is wrapped in layer upon layer of magical enchantments, each one more complex than the last. Anti-muggle charms, concealment spells, protective barriers, the works. It's like the world's most sophisticated security system, except it runs on pure magic instead of cameras and alarms. The architecture alone tells 1,000 stories. Towers spiral upward at impossible angles, connected by bridges that seem to defy gravity. Battlements zigzag across the skyline in no particular pattern, as if different wizards kept adding bits and pieces over the centuries, which, honestly, they probably did. When you've got magic at your disposal, why worry about conventional building codes? But wait until you see it at night. That's when Hogwarts truly comes alive. Hundreds of windows begin to glow as evening approaches, each one casting warm golden light across the ancient stone walls. The castle transforms from an impressive daytime landmark into something absolutely magical. Students studying late, professors grading papers, ghosts floating through corridors, all of it creates this incredible constellation of light against the Scottish darkness. The weird part is what muggles see when they stumble across this area. Remember those protective spells? Well, they work overtime when non-magical folks get too curious. Instead of the magnificent castle that makes wizards gasp in wonder, muggles see nothing but crumbling ruins with a few danger, do not enter signs scattered around. Talk about effective crowd control. Those enchantments are seriously powerful stuff. We're talking about magic so old and so deeply woven into the very stones that it's practically part of the landscape now. The founders didn't mess around when they picked this spot. They wanted somewhere hidden, somewhere safe, somewhere that could protect young witches and wizards for generations to come. Let's not forget the sheer scale of this place. From the train, Hogwarts looks massive, but that's just the beginning. The castle sprawls across the clifftop like a small city, with sections built in different eras creating this amazing jumble of architectural styles. Norman towers next to Gothic spires, medieval walls connecting to Renaissance additions. It's controlled chaos in the best possible way. Then there's the way the castle seems to watch you. Sounds crazy, right? But ask any Hogwarts student, and they'll tell you the same thing. The windows catch the light in ways that feel almost like eyes. The shadows shift and move, and there's this sense that the building itself is aware of everyone who approaches. Maybe it's just the magic soaked into every stone after 1,000 years. Or maybe Hogwarts really is more alive than anyone admits. The positioning on that cliff isn't accidental either. Ancient wizards knew what they were doing when they chose this spot. The elevation provides natural protection, the lake creates a barrier, and the remote Scottish location keeps curious muggles at a comfortable distance. Plus, let's be honest, it looks absolutely incredible up there, especially when storm clouds gather behind those twisted spires. During different seasons, the castle takes on completely different personalities. Autumn paints the surrounding landscape in brilliant reds and golds, making the dark stone walls pop against the colorful backdrop. Winter blankets everything in snow, turning Hogwarts into something from a Christmas card. Spring brings new life to the grounds, while summer shows off the castle's full glory under long Scottish days. What really gets first-year students is the moment they realize this isn't just a school, it's going to be home. Those glowing windows represent dormitories where they'll sleep, classrooms where they'll learn magic, corridors where they'll run between lessons, the Great Hall where they'll eat thousands of meals, the library where they'll study for exams, the common rooms where they'll make lifelong friends. As the train slows and the castle looms larger, anticipation builds to almost unbearable levels. But before anyone sets foot in those ancient halls, there's still the matter of actually getting there. And that's where things get even more interesting, because crossing that dark lake ahead requires something special, something that's been a Hogwarts tradition since the very beginning. The moment first-year students step off the Hogwarts Express, they face their next magical challenge. No buses, no cars, just Hagrid's booming voice calling through the twilight. Furs years over here. What happens next is pure enchantment wrapped in tradition that's older than most wizarding families can remember. Those tiny boats bobbing by the shore aren't just transportation, they're the official welcome committee. Each boat holds exactly 4 students, no more, no less. The magic won't let you squeeze in a 5th person, no matter how desperately you try. Trust me, generations of students have tested this theory. The boats seem fragile, almost toy-like, but they've never sunk. Not once in over 1,000 years of Hogwarts history. Hagrid leads this peculiar fleet in his own boat, which somehow supports his massive frame without tipping. The man is half giant, after all. His lantern cuts through the darkness like a magical lighthouse, and the smaller boats follow automatically. No steering required. The boats know exactly where they're going, even if the nervous first years don't. The lake itself holds secrets that most students never discover. It's not just water and fish down there. The giant squid is probably the most famous resident, but it's surprisingly gentle. Sometimes it surfaces during calm evenings, creating ripples that catch the moonlight. Students have reported seeing tentacles as thick as tree trunks, but the creature seems more curious than dangerous. One legend claims it once saved a drowning student, though the professors neither confirm nor deny such stories. Then there are the merpeople. They live in villages beneath the waves, complete with stone houses and gardens of water plants. Their songs drift upward occasionally, haunting melodies that make your skin tingle. Most students never hear them clearly, because merpeople voices don't carry well above water. But on perfectly still nights, when the lake becomes mirror smooth, you might catch fragments of their ancient music. The boat journey takes about 15 minutes, but it feels both longer and shorter simultaneously. Time gets weird around Hogwarts. The lanterns create a constellation of lights floating across the dark water, each one reflected perfectly in the lake's surface. It's like traveling through a tunnel of stars. Students crane their necks, trying to catch their first glimpse of the castle, but the trees block most of the view. The anticipation builds with every gentle splash of water against the boats. Owls frequently fly overhead during these crossings, their wings silent against the night sky. Some carry letters from worried parents, others deliver last-minute supplies that students forgot to pack. The owls seem to know exactly which boat contains their recipient, swooping down with practiced precision. A few brave owls even land on the boat edges, though this usually makes the passengers nervous about tipping over. What makes this journey truly magical isn't just the enchanted boats or the mysterious lake creatures, it's the shared experience. Every single witch and wizard who attended Hogwarts made this exact same trip on their first night. Your parents crossed this lake, your grandparents too. Even the most famous wizards in history once sat nervously in these boats, wondering what lay ahead. The water stays remarkably calm during these crossings, as if the lake itself understands the importance of the moment. Veteran students sometimes joke that the giant squid acts as an underwater traffic controller, keeping things smooth for the newcomers. The temperature never seems quite right for the season either. Spring crossings feel mysteriously warm, while autumn journeys carry just enough chill to make the castle lights ahead seem more welcoming. As the boats round the final bend, gasps echo across the water. There it stands, Hogwarts Castle in all its impossible glory. But that first glimpse deserves more than a quick mention, because what students see next will reshape their understanding of what magic can truly accomplish. The luminous lanterns continue their dance across the dark water, but now they're competing with something far more spectacular. The castle's hundreds of windows have begun to glow, each one promising warmth, mystery, and adventure. The boats slow their pace slightly, as if even they want to savor this moment. Let's not forget the practical magic at work here. These boats navigate without GPS, radar, or any technology muggles would recognize. They avoid underwater rocks, adjust for wind, and maintain perfect spacing between vessels. The enchantment is so seamless that most students don't even realize they're witnessing incredibly complex magic. The journey ends at a small harbor beneath the castle, where stone steps lead upward into shadows. But before students can fully process their arrival, Hagrid's voice booms again, directing them toward their next adventure. The boats have delivered them safely, just as they've done for countless generations of young witches and wizards. What waits beyond those stone steps will make the magical boat ride seem like a warm-up act. Walking through those towering oak doors into the Great Hall is like stepping into another world entirely. The first thing that hits you, that ceiling. It doesn't exist. Well, it does, but it's been enchanted to look exactly like the sky outside. Tonight, dark clouds drift across scattered stars, and every few seconds a gentle breeze seems to ruffle the magical atmosphere above your head. The ceiling perfectly mirrors whatever's happening in the real sky beyond the castle walls. But wait, there's more weirdness coming your way. Hundreds of candles float in mid-air, dripping wax that somehow never reaches the floor below. They bob gently, casting a warm golden glow over everything. No chandeliers, no light fixtures, just floating candles doing their thing like it's the most normal sight in the world. The flickering flames dance without any wind, creating shadows that shift and move across the stone walls. Then there's the seating situation. 4 enormously long wooden tables stretch across the hall, each one packed with students wearing different colored ties and robes. These aren't just any tables, they're the house tables, and each one buzzes with its own energy. Gryffindor students cluster together in red and gold, laughing loudly and gesturing wildly. The Ravenclaw table hums with quieter conversations, students leaning in close to share clever observations. Slytherin keeps things more reserved, their green and silver creating an almost elegant atmosphere. And Hufflepuff, they're the friendliest bunch, yellow and black robes surrounding newcomers with genuine warmth. Here's where things get really interesting though. The food situation at Hogwarts operates on pure magic, and it's about to blow your mind. Right now, those tables look pretty ordinary, just polished wood and empty golden plates. But the moment Dumbledore gives the signal, those plates will overflow with more food than you've ever seen in one place. We're talking roast beef, chicken, pork chops, lamb chops, sausages, bacon, steak, boiled potatoes, roast potatoes, fries, Yorkshire pudding, peas, carrots, gravy, ketchup, and mint sauce. Oh, and that's just the main course. The house elves working in the kitchens below have been preparing this feast for hours. They cook with magic, season with spells, and somehow manage to keep everything perfectly hot until it magically appears on the tables above. No servers, no kitchen staff walking around, just food materializing exactly when it's needed. But before anyone gets to touch a single bite, there's some serious business to handle first. At the front of the hall sits the high table, where all the professors gather to watch the evening's main event. Professor McGonagall stands ready with a long scroll of names, her lips pursed in concentration. Professor Snape watches from his seat with those dark, calculating eyes. And there's Dumbledore, twinkling behind his half-moon spectacles, clearly enjoying every moment of the anticipation building in the room. The nervous first years shuffle in a tight group, still damp from their boat journey across the lake. They crane their necks to stare at that impossible ceiling, whisper about the floating candles, and steal glances at the older students who seem so confident and at home in this magical space. Some first years look excited, others absolutely terrified, and a few appear ready to bolt back to the boats. Then there's that stool sitting in front of the high table. It looks innocent enough, just old wood and simple construction, but sitting on top of it is the most important object in the entire school, a patched frayed wizard's hat that's about to determine these students' fate for the next 7 years. The Sorting Hat has been making these decisions for over 1,000 years, and it's never been wrong, not once. The buzz of conversation starts to die down as Professor McGonagall prepares to bring out the hat. Students at the house tables quiet their chatter. First years stop their nervous fidgeting, and even the floating candles seem to burn a little steadier. The Great Hall holds its breath. Well, the weird part is what happens next. This ancient, raggedy hat is about to open its mouth. Yes, it has a mouth, and start singing. Not just any song, but a completely original composition that changes every single year. The hat spends months thinking up new lyrics, crafting rhymes that explain each house's qualities while somehow managing to stay entertaining. The anticipation in the room becomes thick enough to cut with a wand. New students are about to discover their Hogwarts family, their dormitory, their teammates, and quite possibly their best friends for life. The hat's decisions will shape rivalries, forge friendships, and set the stage for 7 years of magical education. As Professor McGonagall reaches for that famous sorting hat, every eye in the Great Hall focuses on what's about to become the night's most memorable performance. The moment every first year has been waiting for finally arrives. After crossing the lake, climbing stone steps, and filing into the Great Hall, hundreds of nervous 11-year-olds stand before a patched, frayed wizard's hat sitting on a 3-legged stool. This isn't just any hat, this is the Sorting Hat, and it's about to burst into song. Every September, without fail, the hat opens what you'd assume is its mouth, and delivers a completely original performance. No 2 years get the same tune. Sometimes it's a cheerful ditty about friendship and learning. Other years, especially when dark times loom, the hat's songs turn serious, warning students about unity and the dangers of division. The hat basically serves as Hogwarts' annual musical weather vane, reading the magical world's mood and setting the tone for the school year ahead. But here's where things get fascinating. The Sorting Hat doesn't just sing pretty songs about school spirit, it literally reads minds. When Professor McGonagall places it on a student's head, the hat peers directly into their thoughts, memories, and deepest personality traits. It's like having the world's most invasive job interview, except the interviewer is a 1,000-year-old piece of clothing with a serious attitude. The four houses each attract completely different types of students, and the hat knows exactly where everyone belongs. Gryffindor calls to the brave and bold, those who rush headfirst into danger, and stand up for what's right, even when it's terrifying. These are the students who'd rather face a dragon than back down from a fight. Courage runs in their blood like magical adrenaline. Then there's Ravenclaw, where intelligence and creativity reign supreme. These students devour books like chocolate frogs, solve riddles for fun, and turn homework into art projects. They're the ones asking professors extra questions after class, not because they're confused but because they genuinely want to know more. Wit and wisdom matter more than anything else here. Hufflepuff attracts the loyal and hard-working souls who believe fairness trumps everything. They're the students who'd share their last Bertie Bott's every flavor bean with a stranger, and spend hours helping struggling classmates with their homework. Hard work, patience and dedication define their approach to magic and life. They're also ridiculously good finders, apparently. And then we have Slytherin, home to the ambitious and cunning. These students know exactly what they want and have detailed plans for getting it. They're strategic thinkers who play the long game, often several moves ahead of everyone else. Ambition drives them like rocket fuel, and they'll use every advantage available to reach their goals. Leadership comes naturally here, but the hat's decisions aren't always predictable. Sometimes it places students where nobody expects, including the students themselves. A seemingly shy bookworm might end up in Gryffindor because deep down, they possess incredible moral courage. A student from a long line of Slytherins might land in Hufflepuff, because loyalty matters more to them than ambition. The hat sees potential others miss entirely. The really wild part. Occasionally, the hat struggles with its choice. These students get what's called a hat stole, when the hat deliberates for more than 5 minutes, because the person genuinely fits multiple houses equally well. It's magical indecision at its finest, and it happens more often than you'd think. Some students practically embody all 4 houses at once. House placement shapes everything that follows: your dormitory, your classes, your closest friends, even your biggest rivalries all stem from that single moment under the hat. Gryffindors and Slytherins have maintained their legendary rivalry for centuries, while Ravenclaws and Hufflepuffs tend to get along with pretty much everyone. The competition between houses drives academic achievement, Quidditch matches, and the coveted House Cup Championship. What makes the hat's job even more impressive is its perfect track record. In over 1,000 years, it's never made a mistake. Every single student ends up exactly where they need to be, even when it takes years to understand why. Students who initially feel misplaced often discover the hat saw something in them they hadn't recognized yet. The hat also serves as Hogwarts' memory bank. Having witnessed every significant event in the school's history, it remembers the founder's original vision, countless generations of students, and major magical events that shaped the wizarding world. When it sings, it draws from centuries of accumulated wisdom and experience. After the sorting ceremony ends, and the hat falls silent for another year, newly sorted students find their house tables buzzing with excitement. Older students welcome the newcomers with cheers, applause and promises of upcoming adventures. The house system creates instant family bonds that often last lifetimes, but the evening's magical experiences are far from over. Once the hat finishes its work and returns to its year-long rest, something even more spectacular begins to happen. The empty golden plates and goblets scattered across the 4 house tables start to fill themselves with food that puts any royal feast to shame. Getting sorted into your house feels like the hardest part of starting at Hogwarts. Wrong. Try navigating a castle where the staircases have a mind of their own, and apparently enjoy making students late for class. Hogwarts has exactly 142 staircases. That number might sound manageable, until you realize they're not normal staircases. These magical marvels move whenever they feel like it. One moment you're climbing toward transfiguration, confidently taking the steps 2 at a time. The next moment, your staircase has swiveled away from your destination and deposited you 3 floors away from where you need to be. The staircases don't follow any schedule either. Some move every few minutes like clockwork. Others stay put for hours, then suddenly decide to rotate just as you step onto the first step. It's like the castle enjoys watching students scramble. Older students develop a sixth sense about which staircases are about to move, but first years, they're basically playing magical roulette every time they need to get somewhere. Then there are the trick steps. These aren't marked with warning signs or helpful notices. The castle prefers to keep them as delightful surprises. Step on the wrong stair, and your foot sinks right through what looked like solid stone. Students regularly get their legs stuck halfway through these fake steps, wiggling around like they're caught in magical quicksand. Some trick steps are positioned strategically. The staircase leading to the divination classroom has a particularly sneaky one right near the top. Professor Trelawney probably planned it that way. Nothing says welcome to fortune-telling class like dramatically stumbling through a step and making a grand entrance. But wait, there's more architectural chaos to discover. Doors at Hogwarts don't believe in being straightforward either. Some doors aren't actually doors at all. They're solid walls pretending to be entrances. Students spend their first weeks pushing against fake doors, looking absolutely ridiculous as they try to force their way through what's essentially a painted wall. Other doors require special treatment to open. One door only opens if you ask politely. Another needs to be tickled in exactly the right spot. There's a door on the third floor that only opens if you approach it while hopping on one foot. The castle's founders apparently had quite the sense of humor when designing this place. Secret passages add another layer of complexity to navigation. These hidden routes snake through the castle walls, behind tapestries and under floors. Some passages are obvious once you know where to look. Others are so well concealed that students walk past them for 7 years without noticing. The passage behind the mirror on the 4th floor leads directly to a bathroom 3 floors down. Convenient for emergencies, embarrassing if you accidentally trigger it while just checking your appearance. Another passage connects 2 towers, saving students from a 15-minute walk around the castle's perimeter. Fred and George Weasley became legendary for mapping these secret routes. Their knowledge turned them into unofficial tour guides for anyone brave enough to ask for directions. They knew shortcuts that could get you from the dungeons to the Astronomy Tower in half the normal time. Getting lost isn't just inconvenient at Hogwarts, it can be genuinely problematic. Miss a turn, and you might end up in a part of the castle that's been abandoned for decades. These forgotten areas collect dust, strange echoes, and occasionally things that are better left undisturbed. Some students have wandered into rooms filled with old furniture covered in white sheets, looking like a ghost convention. Others have discovered chambers with portraits of people no one recognizes, who spend their time arguing about events from centuries ago. One particularly unlucky student once opened a door to find a room completely filled with chamber pots. The castle's sense of humor strikes again. The moving staircases create their own social dynamics too. Students learn to travel in groups, partly for safety, and partly because getting lost alone is much more frightening than getting lost with friends. Upper year students often help younger ones navigate, creating informal mentorship bonds over shared navigation disasters. Weather affects the castle's movement patterns. During storms, the staircases seem more restless, moving more frequently and unpredictably. Sunny days bring relative calm, with most staircases staying put longer than usual. It's almost like the castle has moods that change with the weather. Night navigation presents its own challenges. The staircases still move in the dark, but the sounds are different. Footsteps echo strangely. Stone grinding against stone sounds more ominous. Even familiar routes become slightly threatening when you can barely see where you're going. Teachers expect students to figure out the navigation system on their own. There are no orientation tours or helpful maps provided to new students. It's sink or swim, magically speaking. This tradition probably explains why Hogwarts students develop such strong problem-solving skills. They spend their first month just trying to get to class on time. But perhaps the most mysterious aspect of the moving staircases isn't how they work, but why they were created this way in the first place. What secrets might these shifting passages be protecting? Walking through Hogwarts feels like stepping into the world's most talkative art gallery. Every single portrait hanging on these ancient walls can speak, move, and honestly, they have opinions about everything you do. The magical paintings aren't just pretty decorations collecting dust. These portraits are alive in every sense that matters. They blink, they chat with each other, and some of them have been gossiping about students for literally hundreds of years. Makes you wonder what embarrassing stories they could tell, right? Take the fat lady for example. She guards the entrance to Gryffindor Tower like the world's most melodious bouncer. This portrait of a large woman in a pink silk dress absolutely loves to sing opera. Sometimes she hits those high notes at 3 in the morning, which isn't exactly what tired students want to hear, but she takes her job seriously. No password, no entry, period. The weird part is how these portraits can actually travel between different paintings throughout the castle. They literally step out of one frame and pop up in another, like magical Instagram stories come to life. A knight from the third floor might suddenly appear in a landscape painting near the dungeons, probably because he got lost again. Sir Cadogan does this constantly, and he's always challenging people to duels with his tiny sword. But here's where it gets really interesting. Some portraits aren't just chatty neighbors hanging on walls, they're secret keepers and passage guardians. Behind certain paintings hide doorways to hidden tunnels and forgotten rooms. The castle's architects were clearly having fun when they designed this place, because who else would put a secret passage behind a portrait of a fruit bowl? Then there are the historical portraits. Hogwarts has paintings of real wizards and witches from centuries past, and they remember everything they lived through. These aren't just artistic representations, they're like having actual historical figures available for consultation 24/7. You'll want to know what medieval wizard fashion was really like, just ask. They'll probably complain about modern robes while they're at it. The portrait inhabitants have their own social hierarchy too. Some paintings are considered more important than others, usually based on how long they've been at Hogwarts or who they represent. The founders' portraits, when they appear, command serious respect from all the other painted residents. It's like a magical nursing home where everyone's been gossiping for centuries. What's genuinely fascinating is how these portraits can deliver messages throughout the castle. Need to send word to someone on the 7th floor when you're stuck in the dungeons? Tell a portrait, and they'll literally run through the painting network to pass along your message. It's faster than Owl Post and way more entertaining, though probably less reliable since paintings do get distracted by their own conversations. Students quickly learn which portraits are helpful, and which ones are just troublemakers. Some paintings offer genuine advice about finding classrooms or avoiding certain areas after curfew. Others will deliberately give you wrong directions because they think it's funny to watch first years wander around lost for hours. The fat lady isn't the only entrance guardian either. Different common rooms have different painted protectors, each with their own personality quirks and password requirements. Some are strict, others are laid back, and a few are just plain eccentric. The portrait guarding one entrance reportedly only opens for people who can solve riddles, while another supposedly responds only to compliments about the painted subject's appearance. Late at night, when the castle grows quiet, you can actually hear the portraits whispering to each other. They're sharing the day's gossip, discussing student behavior, or sometimes arguing about events that happened 300 years ago. Walking through empty corridors becomes like eavesdropping on the world's longest-running soap opera. Some portraits have been known to leave their frames entirely, wandering off to visit other magical paintings in different locations. They might spend a weekend in a painting at the Ministry of Magic, then return with news from the outside world. It's like having a network of magical correspondents who never need to eat or sleep. The most mysterious portraits are the ones that rarely speak at all. These silent watchers observe everything but keep their thoughts to themselves. Students often wonder what these quiet paintings have witnessed over the decades, and what secrets they're keeping locked away behind their painted lips. And just when you think you understand how the portrait system works, you'll discover a painting that breaks all the rules. Maybe it's a landscape where the painted animals can talk, or a still life where the fruit occasionally rearranges itself into different patterns. But even with all their chatter and movement, these portraits serve another purpose entirely. They're the castle's memory keepers, preserving centuries of Hogwarts history in their painted minds. However, if you think the portraits are chatty, wait until you experience the cozy spaces where students actually live and study. After navigating those tricky staircases and dodging chatty portraits, students finally reach their sanctuary. The common rooms aren't just places to crash after a long day of spellcasting disasters. They're the beating heart of each house, where rivalries simmer, friendships bloom, and homework gets conveniently forgotten. Each common room reflects its house's personality so perfectly, you'd think the founders had interior design degrees. Gryffindor Tower sits high in the castle, accessible only after sweet-talking the fat lady portrait. Step inside, and you're hit with warmth that feels like a magical hug. Red and gold tapestries hang everywhere, while squashy armchairs cluster around a crackling fireplace that never seems to run out of logs. The circular room buzzes with energy, just like its residents. Students sprawl across Persian rugs, planning their next adventure or arguing about Quidditch strategies. The walls practically vibrate with centuries of brave hearts and reckless decisions. But here's where things get interesting. Ravenclaw Tower takes a completely different approach. Their common room sits in a tall tower, accessible through a bronze knocker that asks riddles instead of passwords. No easy entrance here, you actually have to think your way in. The room itself celebrates knowledge like a temple to learning. Bookshelves line every wall, reaching impossibly high ceilings dotted with stars. Blue and bronze silk hangings flutter in drafts from arched windows that offer spectacular views of the mountains. Students here debate everything from ancient runes to whether chocolate frogs are actually sentient. The atmosphere hums with intellectual curiosity, and the occasional heated discussion about theoretical magic. Then there's Slytherin's dungeon domain, which sounds ominous until you realize it's actually quite luxurious. Located beneath the lake, the common room glows with mysterious green light filtering through underwater windows. Sometimes you catch glimpses of the giant squid drifting past, which never gets old. Low-backed black chairs and dark wooden tables create an atmosphere of sophisticated plotting. Silver and green decorations gleam in the dim light, while a fire crackles in an elaborate stone mantelpiece. The room feels like a secret lair where ambitious wizards gather to discuss their grand plans. Students here speak in hushed tones, not because they're necessarily planning anything sinister, but because the acoustics make everything sound more dramatic. Hufflepuff's common room near the kitchens proves that location matters. This cozy space feels like the magical equivalent of your grandmother's favorite room. If your grandmother happened to be an exceptionally talented witch. Yellow hangings warm the circular room, while plants overflow from every available surface. The earthy atmosphere comes from all those plants, and the proximity to the kitchens below. Students often catch whiffs of tonight's dinner preparations, which makes studying significantly more challenging. Comfortable chairs invite long conversations, and the room's welcoming vibe means house boundaries blur more here than anywhere else. What makes these spaces truly magical isn't just their decoration. Each common room develops its own rhythm throughout the day. Mornings buzz with last-minute homework copying and frantic searches for missing textbooks. Afternoons see study groups forming and dissolving as attention spans waver, but evenings transform these rooms into something special. Gryffindor evenings explode with energy. Students reenact Quidditch matches using sugar quills as players, debate the merits of different jinxes, or plan elaborate pranks that would make the Weasley twins proud. The fireplace becomes a gathering point where older students share war stories from their adventures, carefully edited for younger ears. Ravenclaw evenings turn philosophical fast. Discussions range from the theoretical applications of transfiguration to whether wizards could improve Muggle inventions with magic. Chess games stretch for hours, with spectators offering commentary that's more entertaining than the actual matches. Meanwhile, Slytherin students perfect their poker faces during evening card games, where the stakes involve everything from chocolate frog cards to who gets the best seat during tomorrow's potions class. The underwater setting creates an almost hypnotic atmosphere that encourages strategic thinking. Hufflepuff evenings revolve around food and friendship. Students share snacks procured from kitchen raids, swap stories about their families, and organize group study sessions where everyone actually helps instead of competing. The plant-filled environment creates a living space that breathes with natural magic. While these common rooms hold secrets beyond their obvious charms, hidden compartments store everything from banned books to emergency chocolate supplies. Some furniture pieces respond only to house members, opening secret drawers or revealing hidden cushions. Late-night whispers travel through these rooms, carrying gossip, study tips and occasionally world-changing information. As midnight approaches and the castle settles into deeper quiet, these common rooms become launching pads for nocturnal adventures. But sometimes the most magical discoveries happen right here, in the comfort of home base, where house pride meets friendship and creates something extraordinary. Speaking of nocturnal adventures, there's one destination that calls to rule-breaking students when darkness falls. When most students think about sneaking around Hogwarts at night, they're probably dreaming of midnight feasts or secret meetings in empty classrooms. But here's what they're really after: the library. Yeah, the library. Makes sense, right? Where else can you find books that literally bite back when you open them? Madam Pince runs this place like a fortress. She's the kind of librarian who can hear a whisper from 3 floors away and knows exactly which student left jam fingerprints on page 394 of Magical Water Plants of the Mediterranean. The woman has supernatural hearing when it comes to rule breaking, but she's also fiercely protective of every single book in her collection. Some students swear she never actually sleeps, just stands perfectly still between the shelves like a very stern statue. The regular section of the library is impressive enough. Thousands of books line the towering shelves, covering everything from basic transfiguration theory to the complete history of wizard chess championships. Students can spend hours here during the day, researching essays or desperately trying to understand why their levitation spells keep making feathers explode instead of float. But when darkness falls, the real magic begins. Then there's the restricted section. This is where Hogwarts keeps the dangerous stuff. Books about dark magic, forbidden spells and curses that most wizards shouldn't even know exist. The books here don't just contain dangerous knowledge, some of them are actually dangerous themselves. Open the wrong tome without permission, and it might start shrieking loud enough to wake the entire castle. Others have been known to snap shut on readers' fingers or shoot sparks across the room. The weird part is how these books seem to have personalities. Some sulk on their shelves, their leather covers looking deliberately uninviting. Others practically vibrate with dark energy, as if they're eager to share their secrets with anyone brave enough to crack them open. A few of the really ancient ones whisper to themselves in languages that died out centuries ago. Students have always been fascinated by what they can't have. Harry Potter famously snuck into the restricted section, under his invisibility cloak, desperately searching for information about Nicholas Flamel. The books shrieked at him like banshees, nearly getting him caught by Filch. But that's the thing about forbidden knowledge. The more dangerous it seems, the more tempting it becomes. Let's not forget that some books here are just plain weird rather than dangerous. There's Secrets of the Darkest Art, which supposedly contains instructions for creating Horcruxes. Then you've got Magic Most Evil, which sounds terrifying but is actually just really old and uses that annoying medieval spelling for everything. The book Sonnets of a Sorcerer doesn't seem dangerous at all until you realize the poems can put listeners into permanent sleep. Late at night, when most of the castle is asleep, determined students sometimes risk sneaking past Madame Pince's watchful eye. They creep between the towering shelves, their wand light casting long shadows that dance across the walls. The library feels completely different in darkness. Books that seem perfectly innocent during the day take on an ominous presence when you're surrounded by shadows and silence. But why do students risk detention, house point deductions, and Madame Pince's legendary wrath just to read forbidden books? Sometimes it's genuine academic curiosity. More often, it's because they're facing something dangerous and need answers that won't be found in their regular textbooks. When you're dealing with basilisks, dark wizards or mysterious curses, defensive magical theory probably isn't going to cut it. The really clever students have learned to work around the system. They befriend older students who have legitimate research projects requiring restricted materials. They wait for particularly busy periods when Madame Pince might be distracted by first years who don't understand the difference between whispering and normal conversation. Some even forge professor signatures on permission slips, though this rarely works since Madame Pince knows every teacher's handwriting by heart. Ancient tomes in the deepest corners of the library hold secrets that predate Hogwarts itself. These aren't just books about magic, they're repositories of wizard history containing spells that have been forgotten for centuries and techniques that modern wizards consider impossible. Some of these books are so old their pages crumble at the slightest touch, preserved only by powerful conservation charms. The most determined midnight readers develop strategies for dealing with problematic books. They learn which titles require special gloves, which ones need to be approached from specific angles, and which ones should never ever be opened without proper protective spells. It's like a dangerous treasure hunt where the treasure fights back. Of course, all this nighttime scholarship comes with serious risks beyond just getting caught. But sometimes the most important magical education happens in those quiet, forbidden hours when students discover that real learning often requires breaking a few rules. Speaking of rules and the consequences of breaking them, there's another part of the castle where students often find themselves after getting caught on these midnight adventures. Deep beneath Hogwarts Castle, where the warmth of the Great Hall becomes nothing more than a distant memory, lies one of the most intimidating classrooms in the entire school. The dungeon corridors stretch like ancient veins through the castle's foundation, carved from stone that has witnessed centuries of magical education. These aren't your typical basement rooms either. They're proper medieval dungeons, complete with that unmistakable chill that seeps through your robes no matter how many warming charms you've cast. The moment you descend those worn stone steps, the temperature drops noticeably. Your breath doesn't quite fog up, but you can feel the difference. The walls practically drip with moisture, and every footstep echoes with an eerie persistence that makes even the bravest Gryffindor walk a little faster. Then there's the smell. It's not unpleasant exactly, but it's definitely unique. Herbs, pickled specimens, and something that can only be described as very old stone create an aroma that clings to your robes long after you've left. Professor Snape's potions classroom sits at the heart of this underground maze. The room itself feels like stepping into an alchemist's fever dream. Shelves line every available wall space, stretching from floor to ceiling, and packed with glass jars containing ingredients that would make most people's stomachs turn. Pickled rats float in murky solutions. Beetle eyes gleam like tiny black pearls. Some containers hold substances that seem to move on their own, swirling and shifting when nobody's looking directly at them. The desks are arranged in precise rows, each equipped with a small cauldron and basic brewing supplies. But here's what's really unsettling about the place. During the day, when classes are in session, there's constant activity. Cauldrons bubble, students whisper nervously, and Snape's intimidating presence fills every corner. At night, though, the silence becomes almost oppressive. After curfew, when the castle settles into its evening rhythm, the dungeons transform completely. The corridors that seemed merely chilly during the day now feel genuinely cold. Every small sound gets amplified and twisted by the stone walls until you can't tell if that scraping noise came from a mouse or something much larger. Students who venture down here after hours quickly learn that the acoustics play tricks on your mind. Well, not all students avoid the dungeons at night. Slytherin students have to pass through these corridors regularly since their common room is located down here. They've grown accustomed to the atmosphere, but even they admit it takes some getting used to. The greenish light that filters through the dungeon windows creates strange shadows that dance across the walls. During storms, you can actually hear the lake water lapping against the glass, a constant reminder that you're deep underground. But why would anyone voluntarily come down here after dark? Sometimes students forget textbooks or need to retrieve assignments from their daytime potions work. Other times, particularly ambitious students sneak down to practice difficult brewing techniques without the pressure of Snape's watchful eye. The irony, of course, is that Snape himself often prowls these corridors at night, checking for rule breakers and ensuring his precious ingredients remain undisturbed. The weird part is how the dungeon atmosphere actually enhances certain types of magic. Potions that require cool, stable temperatures brew better down here. The stone walls provide natural insulation from magical interference, making delicate brewing processes more reliable. Some of the most complex potions in wizarding history were perfected in environments exactly like this. Then there are the sounds that drift through the dungeons at night. Pipes creak and settle as the castle's ancient plumbing adjusts to temperature changes. Occasionally, you might hear the distant splash of the giant squid moving through the lake above. The Slytherin dormitories are positioned to take advantage of these underwater acoustics, though first-year Slytherins often find the sounds unsettling until they adjust. Let's not forget about the security measures either. The dungeons aren't just naturally intimidating, they're magically protected as well. Certain corridors have enchantments that detect unauthorized visitors. Some of the more valuable potion ingredients are stored behind additional protective spells that would make even experienced wizards think twice about attempting theft. The strangest thing about spending time in the dungeons after dark is how your other senses become heightened. Without the visual distractions of daylight and normal castle activity, you notice details that usually escape attention. The subtle variations in temperature between different corridors, the way sound travels differently depending on which direction you're facing. Even the smell becomes more complex, revealing layers of herbs and magical residue that blend into a single impression during busy daytime hours. Makes sense, right? After all, when you remove the familiar comfort of warmth and light, every other detail demands your attention. But there's something else lurking in these underground spaces that goes beyond mere atmospheric intimidation, something that connects these ancient stones to the wild magic that exists just beyond the castle's carefully maintained boundaries. The Forbidden Forest stretches endlessly beyond Hogwarts' carefully manicured grounds, creating a natural barrier between the civilized world of magic education and something far wilder. Students spend their first weeks at Hogwarts sneaking glances at the tree line during meals, wondering what mysteries lurk in those shadows. The forest isn't just off-limits, it's genuinely dangerous. Every evening, as darkness settles over the castle, strange sounds drift from the forest depths. Howls that don't quite sound like wolves, rustling that suggests creatures much larger than rabbits. The occasional snap of branches that makes even the older students pause mid-conversation. These aren't your garden variety woodland noises either. They carry an otherworldly quality that sends shivers up spines. Hagrid, the gamekeeper, knows the forest better than anyone at Hogwarts. He spent decades wandering its paths, befriending creatures that would terrify most wizards. But even Hagrid treats the forest with respect, especially after dark. There's things in there that don't take kindly to visitors. He often warns students. Coming from someone who once raised a dragon in his hut, that's saying something. The centaurs claim the deepest parts of the forest as their territory. These aren't the gentle, wise creatures from fairy tales. They're proud, sometimes hostile beings who consider humans inferior. They've lived in the forest for centuries, reading the stars and maintaining their own ancient customs. Firenze once carried Harry Potter to safety, but most centaurs view such cooperation with wizards as betrayal. They prefer isolation. Then there's Aragog's family. Giant spiders, each the size of a small car, weaving webs between massive tree trunks. Aragog himself was Hagrid's pet, if you can call a house-sized spider a pet. His children and grandchildren have multiplied over the years, creating an entire colony deep in the forest's heart. They're intelligent enough to speak, which somehow makes them more terrifying than mindless beasts. But the forest isn't all danger and darkness. Unicorns graze in moonlit clearings, their silver blood possessing healing properties so powerful that killing one brings a terrible curse. They're incredibly shy, usually fleeing at the first sign of human presence. Only those pure of heart can approach them freely. Seeing a unicorn in the wild is considered one of the most magical experiences possible. The trees themselves seem almost alive, their branches reaching towards students who venture too close to the forest edge. Ancient oaks and towering pines create a canopy so thick that sunlight barely penetrates during the day. At night, the darkness becomes absolute. No stars, no moon, just the faint glow of mushrooms and the occasional pair of glowing eyes. Students aren't supposed to enter the forest, but detention sometimes requires supervised visits. These punishment expeditions usually involve Hagrid as an escort, plus his massive boarhound Fang for protection, though Fang's more likely to hide behind students than defend them when real danger appears. Still, these detention trips reveal just enough of the forest's wonders to make students desperately curious about what lies deeper inside. The forest changes with the seasons too. Spring brings new growth and the births of magical creatures. Summer creates thick undergrowth that hides even more secrets. Autumn's falling leaves reveal paths previously hidden, while winter's snow makes tracking both easier and more dangerous. Each season offers different opportunities and threats. The Strails nest in the forest's darker corners. These skeletal, winged horses remain invisible to most students, seen only by those who've witnessed death. They're gentle despite their fearsome appearance, but their presence adds another layer of mystery to the forest's reputation. Flying silently through the night, they sometimes pass over the castle grounds like living shadows. Professor Grubbly Plank, who occasionally substitutes for Hagrid, takes a much more cautious approach to forest expeditions. Where Hagrid might cheerfully introduce students to harmless creatures with multiple heads or venomous fangs, Grubbly Plank keeps everyone at safe distances. Her survival rate among substitute teachers is notably higher. The forest's edge provides enough adventure for most students. Collecting herbs for potions class, observing creatures for care of magical creatures assignments, or simply sitting quietly and listening to the wild sounds beyond the tree line. Even Hermione, usually eager for dangerous research, approaches the forbidden forest with unusual caution. Strange lights sometimes flicker between the trees on particularly dark nights. Will-o'-the-wisps perhaps, or something more sinister leading travelers astray. Students in tower dormitories occasionally spot these mysterious glows and wonder what's creating them. The lights never seem to come from any identifiable source, dancing between branches like escaped stars. As midnight approaches and the castle settles into sleep, the forest's influence seems to grow stronger. Its wild magic seeps through open windows, carrying scents of moss and mystery. But there's another place where magic bubbles and brews in the darkness below, the dungeons where potions simmer through the night. The house elves of Hogwarts work in kitchens that most students never see, yet these magical creatures create feasts that would make professional chefs weep with envy. Located directly beneath the Great Hall, these underground kitchens buzz with activity 24 hours a day. The elves don't just cook, they perform culinary magic that defies every law of physics and probably several health codes too. When the welcoming feast begins each September, hundreds of dishes appear simultaneously across 4 long tables. Not transported, not carried, they literally materialize out of thin air. The house elves coordinate this massive operation with military precision, ensuring that roast beef lands next to Yorkshire pudding, that pumpkin juice pitchers never run empty, and that the vegetarian options don't accidentally sprout legs and walk away, which has happened before apparently. The magic behind these feasts goes far beyond simple conjuration. Food can't be created from nothing. That's one of the fundamental laws of magic that even Dumbledore can't bend. Instead, the house elves prepare massive quantities of food in their kitchens, then use transportation charms to send perfectly timed portions to the tables above. The timing has to be flawless, because imagine the chaos if the soup course arrived during dessert, or worse, if the dessert showed up first and ruined everyone's appetite for the main course. But here's where things get really interesting. The house elves somehow know exactly how many students will attend each meal, what they're craving, and even their dietary restrictions. A homesick first year thinking about their grandmother's apple pie might find one waiting at their place setting. A student recovering from a nasty bout of magical flu discovers that their usual favorites have been replaced with gentle healing broths. The elves claim they simply know what's needed, but the level of telepathic coordination required suggests something far more sophisticated than kitchen intuition. Then there's the matter of quantity. Hogwarts students eat like they're preparing for hibernation. Growing wizards and witches apparently need enormous amounts of fuel, especially those involved in Quidditch training or advanced transfiguration classes. The amount of food that appears during a typical feast could feed a small village, yet somehow the portions are always exactly right. Too little, and students go hungry. Too much and waste becomes an issue. Though rumor has it that leftover food doesn't really exist at Hogwarts, thanks to some clever charm work. The house elves take particular pride in their dessert presentation. Treacle tart that stays perfectly warm for hours. Ice cream that never melts, even when sitting directly under floating candles. Chocolate eclairs that somehow manage to be both crispy and soft simultaneously. These aren't just desserts, they're edible demonstrations of advanced magical theory. The fact that most students are too busy enjoying them to appreciate the underlying spell work probably breaks the house elves' hearts just a little. What happens after the official feast ends tells us even more about Hogwarts food culture. Students don't just retire to their dormitories and call it a night. The real adventure begins when hunger strikes at midnight, and brave souls decide to venture into the castle's depths in search of snacks. The house elves, bless their enormous hearts, seem to anticipate these midnight raids with remarkable accuracy. The journey to the kitchens requires navigating through corridors that shift and change, avoiding portraits that might report rule breaking, and somehow locating an entrance hidden behind a massive painting of fruit. Students who successfully tickle the painted pear find themselves welcomed into a warm, bustling kitchen where house elves greet them like long-lost relatives returning home for the holidays. These midnight kitchen visits reveal something beautiful about Hogwarts culture. The house elves don't scold students for being out after curfew or lecture them about proper meal times. Instead, they immediately begin preparing elaborate snacks, as if feeding hungry teenagers at 2 in the morning is the most natural thing in the world. Sandwiches appear stuffed with impossible combinations that shouldn't work but somehow do. Hot chocolate arrives at the perfect temperature, often accompanied by marshmallows that have been charmed to stay fluffy indefinitely. The house elves seem genuinely delighted by these late-night visitors. They ask about classes, remember students' favorite foods from previous visits, and sometimes share kitchen gossip that would make the Daily Prophet Society pages jealous. These interactions suggest that the relationship between students and house elves runs deeper than simple service. There's genuine affection on both sides. What makes these midnight feasts even more special is their spontaneous nature. There's no formal organization, no scheduled snack times. Students simply follow their instincts and hope for the best. The fact that they're always welcomed, always fed, and always sent back to their dormitories with full bellies and warm hearts speaks to something fundamental about Hogwarts itself. But the real magic isn't in the food or even the house elves' incredible efficiency. It's in how these shared meals create bonds that last long after graduation, though not everyone appreciates the social dynamics happening right above their heads. The castle walls practically hum with supernatural activity after midnight. Nearly headless Nick glides through Gryffindor Tower, his head wobbling precariously on the thin strip of skin that keeps it attached. Poor guy tried to join the headless hunt once, but apparently being nearly headless isn't quite enough for their exclusive ghost club. Talk about harsh membership requirements. Each house claims its own resident spirit, and honestly, they couldn't be more different if they tried. Gryffindor's nearly headless Nick remains eternally cheerful, despite his unfortunate execution mishap. The man was beheaded with a blunt axe, 45 whacks to be exact, and somehow managed to keep just enough neck to stay attached. He floats around telling stories about his death day parties, and offering surprisingly good advice to homesick first years. Then there's Slytherin's Bloody Baron, covered head to toe in silvery bloodstains that never fade. Students give him a wide berth in the corridors. The guy radiates an aura of tragedy and regret that makes even the bravest Gryffindors step aside. He rarely speaks, preferring to drift through the dungeons in complete silence, chains clanking ominously behind him. Nobody knows exactly what he did to earn those bloodstains, but the other ghosts treat him with unusual respect. Ravenclaw's Grey Lady takes a completely different approach to her afterlife. She's elegant, distant, and moves through the towers like she's carrying the weight of centuries on her translucent shoulders. Helena Ravenclaw, though she rarely uses her real name, keeps mostly to herself, appearing in the library or common room when students need guidance about particularly challenging academic problems. Her advice comes wrapped in riddles. Naturally, the Fat Friar represents everything wonderful about Hufflepuff House. This jolly monk died centuries ago, but never lost his love for helping others. He's constantly floating around the castle offering encouragement to struggling students, blessing sneezes, and trying to convince the other ghosts that Peeves deserves a second chance, or a third, or maybe a 400th chance at this point. Speaking of Peeves, well, he's not technically a ghost. Poltergeists are entirely different supernatural creatures, and this one happens to be Hogwarts' most persistent troublemaker. While the house ghosts died as humans and retained their personalities, Peeves was never alive to begin with. He's pure chaos energy that somehow gained consciousness and decided to make everyone's life more interesting. Peeves treats the castle like his personal playground. Water balloons appear from nowhere during important ceremonies. Chalk flies across classrooms when professors turn their backs. He's mastered the art of loosening tapestries, just enough that they fall on unsuspecting students. The Bloody Baron is literally the only being at Hogwarts who can control him, though nobody understands why a poltergeist would fear a ghost. But here's where things get really fascinating. These spirits aren't just floating around for entertainment, they're deeply connected to Hogwarts itself. The house ghosts chose to remain at the school rather than moving on to whatever comes next. They're bound to the castle by their love for the place, their regrets, or sometimes both. Nearly Headless Nick once explained that ghosts are simply wizards who are afraid of death. They chose a pale imitation of life instead of the great unknown. Makes you wonder what keeps them so attached to the living world. The Grey Lady seems haunted by secrets she's carried for 1,000 years. The Bloody Baron's guilt appears to anchor him to the dungeons. Even the cheerful Fat Friar seems to be making up for something from his living days. The ghosts serve as living, well, not living exactly, but walking history books. Nearly Headless Nick attended his first feast in 1492, the same year Columbus sailed to America. The Bloody Baron knew the castle's founders personally. These spirits have watched empires rise and fall while floating through the same corridors where today's students worry about transfiguration essays. Students often forget that death doesn't automatically grant wisdom though. The ghosts retain all their human flaws along with their memories. Nearly Headless Nick can be vain about his appearance. The Grey Lady holds grudges that have lasted centuries. The Fat Friar's kindness sometimes borders on naivety that gets him into trouble with Peeves. Late at night, when the castle settles into its deepest quiet, you might catch glimpses of other spirits too. Former students who couldn't bear to leave, professors who died at the school, even a few unfortunate souls who met their end in the more dangerous parts of the castle. They drift through walls and glide down staircases. Reminders that Hogwarts holds onto everyone who truly loves it. The strangest part? Living students barely react anymore. After a few weeks, seeing a headless ghost wish you good morning feels perfectly normal. But there's something magical about sharing space with beings who've experienced both life and what comes after, especially when you're trying to figure out your own path through the mysterious corridors ahead. High above the castle towers, where the wind carries secrets and the night air hums with magic, sits one of Hogwarts' most beloved gathering places. The Owlery isn't just a building, it's a bustling postal headquarters that never sleeps. Hundreds of school owls call this circular stone tower home, and trust me, they take their job seriously. Walk up those winding stone steps any time of day or night, and you'll find controlled chaos. Owls perched on every available surface, from wooden beams to window ledges. Some are grooming their feathers with the precision of professional athletes. Others are sizing up packages, calculating flight routes in their sharp minds. The clever ones, they're already sorting through letters, reading addresses with an intelligence that would put most postal workers to shame. But here's where it gets interesting. These aren't just any delivery birds. School owls possess an almost supernatural ability to find anyone, anywhere. Send a letter to my cousin who moved somewhere near London last month, and somehow your owl will track them down. Geography means nothing to them. They navigate by something deeper than maps or street signs, pure magical instinct. The constant arrivals and departures create a rhythm all their own. Dawn brings the heaviest traffic as owls return from overnight deliveries, their talons clutching replies and packages from families across Britain. Some look exhausted from long flights, others seem energized by their adventures. The afternoon shift is lighter, mostly short-distance runs to Hogsmeade or nearby villages. Evening departures are the most dramatic, urgent letters that simply cannot wait until morning. Students discover quickly that the Owlery operates on owl time, not human time. Your pet might decide Tuesday is perfect for delivering that birthday letter you needed sent on Monday, or they might surprise you by completing a 3-day journey in 6 hours, because they caught favorable winds and felt motivated. Owls have personalities, and those personalities directly affect your mail service. The night hours transform this place into something almost mystical. Moonlight streams through the open windows, casting silver patterns across the stone walls. Students often climb the tower steps after curfew, whispering secrets to their feathered companions, or simply seeking the comfort of a familiar pet. There's something about the quiet hooting and gentle wing rustles that soothes homesick hearts. What most people don't realize is how social these owls actually are. They gossip. Well, maybe gossip isn't the right word, but they definitely share information. An owl returning from London might communicate something important to one heading towards Scotland. They form temporary partnerships for difficult deliveries, sometimes traveling in pairs when weather turns nasty or distances grow extreme. The packages tell their own stories too. Care packages from worried mothers, stuffed with homemade sweets and warm socks. Urgent textbooks ordered from Diagon Alley after someone accidentally blew up their potions manual. Birthday presents wrapped in colourful paper that somehow never gets damaged during flight. Love letters between students from different houses, delivered with a discretion that would make professional spies jealous. Then there are the regular customers, owls who've claimed specific students as their personal responsibility. These relationships run deeper than simple pet ownership. Some owls refuse to carry mail for anyone except their chosen human. Others become protective, screening correspondence and occasionally refusing to deliver letters they somehow sense might cause trouble. The bond between student and owl often outlasts the Hogwarts years, with faithful birds continuing deliveries long into adulthood. Weather adds another layer of complexity to owl post operations. Snowstorms that would ground modern aircraft barely slow down a determined Hogwarts owl. They've mastered flying in conditions that defy logic, navigating through fog so thick you can't see your own hand, or battling winds that would knock a grown wizard off his feet. Their feathers seem designed for every possible weather condition Britain can throw at them. The really fascinating part happens during exam periods. The Owlery becomes a stressed-out hub of academic anxiety as students desperately request notes from friends at other schools, order last-minute study guides, or send panicked letters home, asking for emergency supplies of pepper-up potion and chocolate frogs. The owls sense this tension and somehow rise to meet it, working overtime to ensure every crucial delivery reaches its destination. Clear nights are when the Owlery truly shines, literally. The tower's position offers an unobstructed view of the star-filled sky above the Scottish Highlands. Constellations wheel overhead in their ancient patterns while owls launch themselves into the darkness below, their wings catching stray moonbeams as they disappear into the night. The sight never gets old. Dozens of silhouettes against the glittering sky, each carrying messages of hope, love, worry, or excitement to destinations unknown. But there's something else that makes those midnight visits to the Owlery special, something that connects this bustling postal centre to the deeper magic of Hogwarts itself, where even the very stars above seem to hold secrets worth studying. The highest point at Hogwarts isn't just another classroom, it's the Astronomy Tower, where students climb what feels like a million stairs to reach the castle's most spectacular viewing point. And yes, your legs will hate you by the time you get there. But here's the thing about astronomy classes that makes them completely different from every other subject at Hogwarts. They happen when the rest of the castle is fast asleep. Most classes drag you out of bed at dawn, or keep you busy during daylight hours. Astronomy, it waits until the sun disappears, and darkness blankets the Scottish Highlands. Professor Sinistra schedules these sessions for the darkest hours of night, usually starting around midnight. Students trudge up those endless spiral stairs carrying telescopes, star charts, and whatever's left of their energy after a full day of magical education. The tower itself defies every expectation you might have about cramped castle spaces. It's surprisingly wide at the top, with a circular platform that gives you a complete 360 view of everything surrounding Hogwarts. No walls block your sightlines up here, just low stone barriers that keep sleepy students from accidentally wandering off the edge during particularly intense meteor shower observations. Winter nights transform this place into something almost otherworldly. The Scottish air cuts through your robes like invisible knives, and your breath creates small clouds that drift away into the star-filled darkness. Students huddle together, not just for warmth, but because there's something about being so high above everything else that makes you want human company. The silence up here is different from anywhere else in the castle. It's not the comfortable quiet of the library or the mysterious hush of empty corridors. This silence feels vast and endless, like you're floating in space itself. But here's where astronomy gets really interesting. You're not just memorizing planet names or constellation patterns, you're tracking actual celestial movements that affect magical spells and potion brewing. The position of Jupiter influences certain transformation spells, Mars alignment affects defensive magic strength, full moons don't just transform werewolves, they amplify divination accuracy and make some healing potions twice as effective. Professor Sinistra never lets students forget these practical connections. She'll point out Venus through a telescope lens, then explain how its current position strengthens love potions brewed that week. Or she'll have everyone chart Saturn's movement while discussing how it affects long-term curses and protective enchantments. Makes sense, right? Magic isn't separate from the natural world, it's deeply connected to everything happening in the cosmos above. The telescopes themselves are far more sophisticated than anything Muggles use. These magical instruments can zoom in on distant planets with crystal clarity, revealing surface details that should be impossible to see from Earth. They automatically adjust for atmospheric interference and can even show magical auras surrounding celestial bodies. Some advanced models display constellation movements across time, letting students watch how star patterns shifted over centuries. Then there's the unpredictable weather factor that keeps everyone on their toes. Scottish nights are notorious for sudden cloud cover that can ruin hours of careful observation work. Students learn to work fast when clear skies appear, sketching constellation positions and recording telescope readings before the next weather system rolls in. Rain sends everyone scrambling for the stairs, carrying expensive equipment while trying not to slip on wet stone steps. Winter brings the most spectacular viewing conditions, despite the brutal cold. The air is clearer, the stars seem brighter, and meteor showers are absolutely breathtaking from this height. Students who normally complain about staying awake past midnight find themselves genuinely excited when Professor Sinistra announces a special viewing session for the Geminids or Perseids. Watching shooting stars streak across the sky while standing on top of a magical castle beats any fireworks display you've ever seen. The weird part is how time seems to work differently up here. Minutes stretch into what feels like hours when you're focused on tracking planetary movements through a telescope. But then suddenly you realize dawn is approaching and the entire night disappeared without you noticing. Maybe it's the altitude, or perhaps there's some kind of time-related enchantment affecting the tower. But every student mentions this strange temporal distortion. Let's not forget the occasional visits from Hogwarts' owl population during these late-night sessions. Owls naturally hunt at night, and the tower's height makes it a perfect perch for surveying the grounds below. Students working quietly with their telescopes often hear the soft whoosh of wings overhead or catch glimpses of pale shapes gliding past on silent hunting flights. Some owls seem curious about the human activity, and will perch nearby, watching students work with those unnervingly intelligent golden eyes. What makes these midnight astronomy sessions truly magical isn't just the subject matter or the spectacular views. It's the sense of connection to something infinitely larger than the castle walls that usually contain your daily life. But even the most dedicated stargazers eventually need to descend those countless stairs and navigate Hogwarts' maze-like interior back to their dormitories, where different kinds of secrets wait in hidden passages throughout the castle. Most students think they know Hogwarts after a few months of living there. They learn the main corridors, figure out which staircases to trust, and memorize the route to their favorite classrooms. But here's what they don't realize. They're only seeing about half the castle. The other half exists in the shadows, behind false walls and beneath loose floorboards, waiting for someone curious enough to find it. Hogwarts wasn't just built with regular architecture in mind. The founders were practical people who understood that a school full of magical teenagers might occasionally need alternative routes. Or whether you're avoiding Filch after curfew, escaping a particularly boring history of magic lesson, or simply satisfying that itch to explore somewhere you're not supposed to be, the castle has you covered. The most famous passage hides behind the hump of a one-eyed witch statue on the 3rd floor. Tap it with your wand and whisper Descendium, and the hump slides open like a trapdoor. What follows is a stone slide that deposits you into a tunnel leading straight to Honeyduke's cellar in Hogsmeade. The tunnel stretches for nearly a mile underground, damp and chilly, but absolutely worth it when you emerge behind stacks of chocolate frogs and Bertie Bott's every flavor beans. Then there's the passage hidden behind the mirror on the 4th floor. This one's trickier because the mirror doesn't just swing open, it melts away like water when you press your palm against it. The sensation is unsettling, like sticking your hand through liquid silver, but the tunnel beyond leads to the Humping Willow's base. Off. Not the most practical destination unless you fancy dodging murderous tree branches, but it does offer a quick escape route to the grounds. The portrait of Archie Alderton conceals another favourite. Unlike most magical portraits, Archie doesn't chat or offer advice. He simply tips his hat and steps aside when students approach at the right angle. His frame opens onto a narrow passage that winds behind the walls of several classrooms. You can actually hear lessons in progress as you creep past. Professor McGonagall's stern voice explaining transfiguration theory, or Snape's silky threats during potions class. More than one student has used this route to slip back into class after an unauthorized bathroom break that turned into a 20-minute adventure. But here's where it gets interesting. Some passages don't appear on any map, not even the legendary Marauders map created by Messrs. Orny, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. These forgotten routes shift and change like living things. A door that opened onto a shortcut to the library last week might seal itself permanently this week, or worse, it might open onto something entirely different. Several students have reported stepping through familiar doorways only to find themselves in parts of the castle they've never seen before, with tapestries depicting unfamiliar scenes and portraits of people who claim to have been there for centuries. The really clever passages require more than just finding a hidden switch or whispering the right word. Some respond only to specific magical signatures. Others demand riddles be solved or require you to hum particular melodies. There's a section of wall near the Ravenclaw common room that only opens for students who can recite the first law of elemental transubstantiation backward while standing on one foot. Sounds ridiculous until you realize it perfectly captures the Ravenclaw spirit of combining knowledge with creativity. What makes these passages truly magical isn't just their convenience, it's their personality. The castle seems to understand what students need. During exam season, new shortcuts mysteriously appear between the library and common rooms. When tensions run high between houses, passages that might encourage late-night dueling have a tendency to seal themselves. And during the darkest times, when real danger threatens the school, these hidden routes become lifelines, allowing people to move unseen through the castle's vulnerable areas. The strangest part, some passages seem to create themselves. Students swear they've discovered new routes that weren't there the day before, complete with worn stone steps and torch brackets that look centuries old. It's as if Hogwarts itself recognizes the need for mystery and adventure, constantly reshaping itself to keep even long-time residents guessing. Fred and George Weasley spent 7 years mapping these secrets, and they barely scratched the surface. Their Marauders map became legendary precisely because it revealed just how much of Hogwarts remains hidden. Every dot moving through seemingly solid walls, every name appearing in impossible locations, proof that the castle holds more secrets than any student could discover in a lifetime. Of course, not every passage leads somewhere pleasant. Some end in dead ends filled with decades of dust and spiderwebs. Others loop back on themselves in ways that make no architectural sense. And a few lead to places that are probably better left unexplored. Still, as students navigate these hidden highways through Hogwarts, they're not just avoiding detection or cutting travel time, they're participating in a tradition as old as the castle itself, adding their own footsteps to paths worn smooth by generations of curious minds. But even the most well-traveled secret passages pale in comparison to what awaits in the quieter corners of the grounds, where magical creatures find their own hidden refuges. While students toss and turn in their dormitory beds, dreaming of Quidditch matches and failed potions exams, Hogwarts becomes a sanctuary for creatures most wizards never see after dark. The castle doesn't just house students and ghosts. It's home to an entire ecosystem of magical animals, each finding their own quiet corner to rest when the moon rises over the Scottish Highlands. Deep in the Forbidden Forest, hippogriffs fold their magnificent wings and settle beneath ancient oak trees. These proud creatures, half eagle and half horse, choose the highest branches they can reach. Their keen eyes never fully close. Even in sleep they remain alert for danger. Griffin-like heads tucked under powerful wings, they look like feathered statues until morning light calls them back to flight. But here's the thing about hippogriffs, they're incredibly picky about their sleeping spots. Each one claims the same branch every night, and heaven help any creature that tries to steal it. Then there are the strolls, those skeletal winged horses visible only to those who've witnessed death. Most students walk right past them without knowing they're there. These misunderstood creatures gather in small herds near the edge of the forest, their bat-like wings folded close to their bodies. They're surprisingly gentle for something that looks like a nightmare. During the day, they pull the school carriages. At night, they rest standing up, like regular horses, occasionally nuzzling each other with surprising tenderness. The weird part is how they seem to comfort each other, as if they understand the weight of what they represent. The care of magical creatures paddocks near Hagrid's hut buzz with activity even after curfew. Bowtruckles, those stick-like tree guardians, curl up in the wand-quality trees they protect so fiercely. They look like tiny wooden sculptures when they sleep, practically invisible among the branches. Nifflers burrow into soft earth, their pouches still bulging with shiny objects they've borrowed during the day. These little troublemakers are like magpie moles, obsessed with anything that glitters. Let's not forget the more unusual residents. Blast-ended scroots, Hagrid's questionable breeding experiments, huddle together for warmth despite their armored shells. Nobody's quite sure what they're crossed with, and frankly, it's probably better not to ask. They make soft rumbling sounds when they sleep, like contented dragons. Well, if dragons were the size of large dogs and twice as unpredictable, the castle itself harbors quieter creatures. In the dungeons, Mrs. Norris, Filch's beloved cat, prowls the corridors with supernatural stealth. She's not exactly magical, but after years at Hogwarts, she's absorbed enough magic to see things ordinary cats cannot. Her yellow eyes reflect torchlight as she patrols for rule breakers. Padding silently across stone floors, students swear she can appear out of thin air. High in the Owlery, hundreds of owls roost in organized chaos. Great horns, barn owls, tawny owls, and tiny scops owls all claim their preferred perches. The sound is surprisingly peaceful, soft hooting, gentle rustling of feathers, the occasional flutter as one owl shifts position. They're postal workers really, but they take their rest seriously. Some owls are school property, while others belong to students. Yet they all seem to coexist in this tower kingdom, bound by some unspoken owl code. But the most extraordinary creature sleeps in the headmaster's office. Fawkes, Dumbledore's phoenix, perches on his golden stand, crimson and gold feathers glowing faintly even in rest. Phoenix sleep is different from any other creature's rest. Fawkes doesn't close his eyes completely. Instead, he enters a meditative trance, his magical fire burning low but never extinguished. Sometimes students walking past the office late at night catch glimpses of that warm golden light seeping under the door. The Phoenix's presence seems to keep the entire castle feeling safe, like a magical nightlight for the whole school. Down in the dormitories, students' pets add their own charm to the nighttime symphony. Cats purr on windowsills, rats nestle in cage bedding, and the occasional toad croaks from a terrarium. Trevor, Neville's perpetually escaping toad, usually ends up somewhere completely unexpected by morning. That toad has seen more of Hogwarts than some seventh years. These creatures, from the magnificent to the mundane, make Hogwarts truly alive. They're not just magical animals, they're residents, each playing their part in the castle's ecosystem. The castle protects them, and in return they add something irreplaceable to its character. Makes sense, right? As these magical creatures settle into their nightly rest, another part of Hogwarts remains vigilant through the dark hours, a place where healing happens and watchful eyes never truly sleep. The hospital wing at Hogwarts operates under different rules than any regular medical facility you've ever seen. While Muggle hospitals rely on surgery and medicine that takes weeks to work, Madame Pomfrey can mend broken bones in minutes with a simple potion. But here's what makes midnight in the hospital wing truly fascinating. It's when the real magic of healing happens. The white curtains around each bed don't just provide privacy, they're enchanted to detect a patient's emotional state and adjust accordingly. Feeling anxious, the curtains glow with a subtle golden light that calms the nerves. Having nightmares, they'll emit a gentle lavender scent that promotes peaceful sleep. The weird part is, most students never notice these changes happening. Madame Pomfrey doesn't actually sleep in the traditional sense. She's mastered a rare form of magical rest, where part of her consciousness remains alert to any medical emergencies. This means she can be snoring softly in her office one moment, then instantly awake if a student's condition changes. It's like having a guardian angel with an extensive knowledge of magical ailments. The healing potions bubbling on bedside tables aren't just randomly mixed remedies. Each one is specifically brewed for its patient and continues brewing throughout the night. A pepper-up potion for the common cold will literally steam more vigorously if the patient's fever spikes. Skelegro, That disgusting bone-regrowing potion actually tastes worse if you're not drinking it consistently. The potion's way of ensuring patients don't skip doses. Then there's the collection of portraits hanging on the hospital wing walls. These aren't just any magical paintings. They're former Hogwarts medical staff who've chosen to remain and offer their expertise. Dilys Derwent, a famous healer painted in 1722, still provides second opinions on particularly tricky cases. She's saved more than a few students by spotting rare symptoms that even Madame Pomfrey might miss. But the portraits serve another purpose during those long, quiet midnight hours. They become counselors for students who can't sleep due to pain or worry. Portrait healer Hippocrates Smethwick has a particular talent for calming students who've had their first serious magical accident. His gentle voice and centuries of wisdom help young wizards process the reality that magic can hurt as well as heal. The hospital wing's connection to the rest of the castle becomes especially apparent at night. The magical monitoring system alerts Madame Pomfrey instantly if any student in the school suffers a serious injury. This network of enchantments can detect everything from Quidditch crashes to poorly executed transfiguration attempts that leave students with temporary tails or extra limbs. What's really impressive is how the wing adapts its healing methods based on the type of magic involved. Students hexed by dark arts require completely different treatments than those injured by misfired pranks. The room itself seems to recognize these distinctions, with the very air growing warmer and more comforting for victims of curses, while maintaining a crisp, energizing atmosphere for those recovering from exhaustion or overexertion. The medicine cabinet in Madame Pomfrey's office would make any potions master jealous. Ingredients that are incredibly rare elsewhere get used routinely here. Phoenix tears for the most serious wounds, unicorn hair for purification potions, and even powdered moonstone for treating magical shock. The cabinet magically restocks itself, drawing supplies from St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries through an enchanted delivery system. During particularly busy periods like after a Quidditch match or following a particularly challenging defense against the dark arts lesson, the hospital wing can expand itself. Extra beds simply appear where needed, complete with their own monitoring enchantments and healing equipment. The room has handled everything from the aftermath of Lockhart's disastrous dueling demonstration to students suffering from serious curse damage. Let's not forget the psychological healing that happens here too. Many students find themselves in the hospital wing not just for physical injuries, but for the emotional trauma that can come with magical accidents. Being accidentally hit by a stunning spell, or having a close encounter with a dangerous magical creature, can leave lasting mental scars. Madame Pomfrey has developed specialized treatments that help students process these experiences and return to their studies with confidence. The most touching aspect of Midnight in the Hospital Wing might be how Madame Pomfrey maintains detailed records of every student she's ever treated. These aren't just medical files, they're chronicles of young wizards learning to control their power, making mistakes and growing stronger. She's witnessed generations of students face their fears and overcome magical challenges that would terrify most adult wizards. Recovery here happens faster than anywhere else in the magical world, but it's not just about the potions and spells. It's about the care, wisdom and protection that surround every patient. While students rest and heal under Madame Pomfrey's watchful eye, just down the corridor lies a room that appears only when someone truly needs it most. Deep within the walls of Hogwarts exists something truly extraordinary. A room that doesn't follow the usual rules of architecture or even basic logic. The room of requirement appears only when someone desperately needs it, and here's the catch, it becomes exactly what that person requires in that moment. Walking past the same stretch of corridor 3 times while concentrating on what you need will reveal a door that wasn't there moments before. But this isn't just any ordinary hidden room. The space inside completely transforms itself based on your specific requirements. Need a place to practice dangerous spells without getting caught? The room provides thick walls, protective cushions and even practice dummies. Searching for somewhere to hide a forbidden object? Suddenly you'll find yourself in a vast warehouse filled with centuries of hidden treasures, forgotten furniture, and mysterious artifacts left by generations of students. The room's transformations are mind-boggling in their detail. When Dumbledore's army needed a secret training ground, the room supplied everything from defensive spellbooks to magical practice equipment. The walls became reinforced to contain wayward hexes. Cushions appeared to soften inevitable falls. Even mirrors materialized so students could watch their wand movements and perfect their technique. What makes this even more fascinating is how the room seems to anticipate needs you haven't even thought of yet. Students looking for a quiet study space might discover not just desks and chairs but also the exact textbooks they needed, perfectly organized notes from previous years, and even snacks to keep them focused during long revision sessions. Then there's the room's most bewildering feature, its ability to become multiple things for multiple people simultaneously. When different students with conflicting needs approach together, the room somehow manages to accommodate everyone. It might create separate sections, each perfectly suited to different requirements, or find creative compromises that serve multiple purposes at once. The strangest part? The room doesn't just provide objects, it creates entire environments. Students seeking relaxation have discovered tropical beaches complete with the sound of waves and warm sand between their toes. Others desperate for home comfort have found perfect replicas of their family living rooms, down to the smell of their mother's cooking and the creak of familiar floorboards. But here's where things get really weird. The room seems to have its own sense of morality. Students attempting to use it for genuinely harmful purposes often find doors that won't open or rooms that provide everything except the dangerous items they're seeking. It's as if Hogwarts itself is making judgment calls about what constitutes a legitimate need versus a destructive want. Some students have reported finding rooms that feel impossibly large, cathedral-sized spaces that couldn't possibly fit within Hogwarts' actual dimensions. Others have discovered cozy nooks barely big enough for one person, yet perfectly suited for their need to hide from the world. The room doesn't seem bound by the physical constraints of the castle around it. The most intriguing mystery involves the room's memory. Objects left behind by previous users sometimes remain, creating an ever-growing collection of abandoned belongings. Students have stumbled upon love letters from decades past, experimental potions left by long-graduated pupils, and even furniture that clearly predates their grandparents' time at school. It's like walking through a museum of Hogwarts secrets. What's particularly clever is how the room handles timing. Multiple students can need it simultaneously without ever encountering each other, as if it exists in several dimensions at once. The room seems to understand not just what you need, but when you need privacy to get it. The room has saved countless students from academic disasters, relationship drama, and homesickness. It's provided everything from emergency bathroom facilities during long exam periods to elaborate birthday party venues for students whose friends wanted to surprise them. Some have even found it transforming into professional quality kitchens when they desperately missed home cooking. Yet for all its helpfulness, the room of requirement can be maddeningly elusive. Students who discovered it easily one day might walk the same corridor for weeks without seeing so much as a crack in the wall where the door should appear. The room seems to know the difference between genuine need and mere curiosity. The most dedicated room hunters have noticed patterns in its appearances. It seems more responsive during times of high-stress exam periods, after major school conflicts, or when students are dealing with personal crises, almost as if Hogwarts itself recognizes when its inhabitants need extra support. But even this remarkable room holds deeper secrets than most students realize. Hidden within its ever-changing walls are mysteries that connect to some of the castle's most dangerous legends, and spaces that reveal just how many dark objects have been concealed here over the centuries. After exploring that mysterious room of requirement, whispers start floating through the castle corridors about another secret gathering spot. Students huddle in corners, sharing hushed conversations about forbidden meetings and midnight practice sessions. All the dueling club might sound official, but at Hogwarts most of the real action happens when teachers aren't watching. Well, here's the thing about teenage wizards. Give them powerful wands and tell them not to use magic after hours, and what do you think happens? They sneak off to practice spells anyway. The unofficial dueling sessions that happen throughout Hogwarts aren't exactly advertised in the school handbook. These aren't the formal supervised clubs with proper rules and safety measures. These are pure student rebellion wrapped in magical combat training. Students slip out of their dormitories well past curfew, meeting in abandoned classrooms or empty corridors. The 7th floor tends to be popular, since it's far from Snape's dungeon patrols. Makes sense, right? Nobody wants to explain to the potions master why they're casting stunning spells at 2 in the morning. The participants change locations regularly, using everything from empty transfiguration rooms to secluded spots near the Astronomy Tower. But why risk detention and house point deductions for these secret duels? Most students claim they need the practice. Defense against the dark arts classes don't always cover practical combat situations. Learning theory from textbooks is one thing, but actually dodging a jellylegs jinx while trying to cast your own counter curse, that's completely different. These midnight sessions give students real experience they can't get from regular lessons. The weird part is how organized these informal clubs become. Students develop their own ranking systems and unwritten rules. First years rarely get invited, mostly because they can barely manage basic spells without accidentally setting something on fire. Second and third years form the bulk of participants, eager to prove themselves and test their growing magical abilities. Older students sometimes show up to demonstrate advanced techniques or settle house rivalries through magical combat instead of regular arguments. Then there's the creativity factor that makes these sessions genuinely fascinating. Without professors limiting them to curriculum spells, students experiment with unusual magical combinations. Someone might try transfiguring their opponent's shoelaces while simultaneously casting a Confundus charm. Another student discovers that casting Lumos at exactly the right moment can temporarily blind an opponent attempting a precision hex. These aren't techniques you'll find in standard defense textbooks. House rivalries definitely add extra intensity to these gatherings. Gryffindors and Slytherins facing off in magical combat. The competitive tension could power half the castle's enchantments. Ravenclaws approach dueling like academic puzzles, analyzing their opponent's patterns and weaknesses. Hufflepuffs might seem less aggressive, but they're surprisingly good at defensive magic and endurance battles that outlast flashier opponents. Let's not forget the constant danger of getting caught. Students post lookouts at corridor entrances and stairways, ready to signal if professors or prefects approach. Everyone keeps their wand lights dimmed to avoid detection. The paranoia adds genuine excitement to these sessions. Nothing makes your heart race quite like hearing footsteps in the distance while you're locked in magical combat with a rival house member. Some of these secret clubs develop impressive reputations throughout the school. Word spreads about particularly skilled duelists or spectacular magical mishaps. Remember, teenage wizards love gossip almost as much as they love showing off their magical abilities. Stories get exaggerated with each retelling until a simple tickling charm becomes an epic battle worthy of professional aura training. The spell selection reveals interesting patterns too. Students gravitate toward non-lethal but effective magic. Disarming charms, stunning spells, and various jinxes that cause temporary embarrassment rather than permanent damage. Nobody wants to explain serious injuries to Madame Pomfrey, especially injuries acquired during unauthorized magical dueling after midnight. The goal is proving magical skill, not actually harming fellow students. And the weird part is how these sessions sometimes bridge house divisions in unexpected ways. Students who might ignore each other during regular classes develop grudging respect through magical combat. Defeating someone in a fair duel, or getting thoroughly outmatched by a superior opponent, creates different relationship dynamics than typical classroom interactions. The atmosphere during these gatherings has its own unique character. Whispered encouragement from spectators, the soft whoosh of spells cutting through darkness, occasional muffled laughter when someone's jinx backfires spectacularly. The combination of secrecy, competition, and magical experimentation creates an energy you won't find anywhere else in the castle. But eventually, even the most dedicated secret dueling enthusiasts need fresh air and open space. The confined corridors and classrooms have their limitations for magical practice. When morning arrives and these midnight warriors finally return to their dormitories, some start dreaming about wide-open spaces where they could really test their abilities without worrying about hitting ancient tapestries or priceless magical artifacts. The Quidditch pitch at night transforms into something completely different from the chaotic battleground students know during daylight hours. Where screaming crowds once filled every seat, now only silence stretches across the empty stands. The oval stadium sits like a sleeping giant on the castle grounds, its towering goalposts reaching toward the star-filled sky like massive sentinels guarding ancient secrets. Enchanted lanterns float around the pitch perimeter, casting a soft golden glow that never dims. These aren't ordinary lights, they've been charmed to burn indefinitely, powered by the same magic that keeps the castle's portraits talking and the staircases moving. The glow reflects off the perfectly manicured grass below, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere that makes the entire stadium feel suspended between the real world and something far more magical. But here's what most students never realize. Quidditch captains often sneak their teams out here for secret midnight practices. The rulebook says nothing about nighttime training sessions, and ambitious captains know that extra practice could mean the difference between winning the House Cup and watching their rivals celebrate. Oliver Wood was notorious for this during his time as Gryffindor captain, dragging his team out at ungodly hours to perfect their formations under starlight. The weird part is how different flying feels at night. Without the sun's warmth and the crowd's energy, broomsticks respond differently to their riders. The air is thinner, colder, and every movement seems amplified in the darkness. Players have to rely on instinct rather than sight, making catches and passes based on sound and feel rather than clear vision. Some say it makes you a better player, others just complain about the cold. Then there's the storage situation that would make any Muggle sports facility jealous. The broomstick sheds aren't just regular storage units. They're protected by anti-theft charms so powerful that even thinking about stealing a broom while standing near them gives you an uncomfortable tingling sensation. Each broom is catalogued and magically tagged, meaning Madam Hooch can tell instantly if someone's borrowed equipment without permission. The Nimbus series and firebolts are kept in special climate-controlled sections, because apparently even magical broomsticks can suffer from humidity damage. What really sets the nighttime pitch apart is the grass itself. This isn't your typical lawn that needs constant care and watering. The entire field has been enchanted to maintain perfect playing conditions year-round. Rain slides right off without creating mud. Snow melts before it can accumulate. The grass stays exactly the right height and softness for safe landings, even after the most spectacular crashes. Herbology students would kill to know the specific charms used, but the groundskeeping secrets have been passed down through generations of caretakers who guard them like state secrets. All makes sense, right? You can't have the school's most important sporting venue turning into a swamp every time it rains in Scotland, which, let's be honest, is pretty much constantly. The echo effect after matches creates something truly special. Long after the final whistle has blown and the last student has trudged back to their dormitory, the cheers seem to linger in the air. It's not just imagination, the stadium's acoustics have been magically enhanced to amplify crowd noise during games, and some of that enchantment appears to have a memory of its own. Walking through the empty stands hours after a particularly exciting match, you might catch whispers of celebration or groans of disappointment carried on the night breeze. Let's not forget the creatures that call the pitch home after dark. Bowtruckles occasionally venture out from the forbidden forest to investigate the wooden goalposts, apparently fascinated by the enchanted timber. Garden gnomes have been spotted digging small tunnels along the pitch boundaries, though they scatter the moment anyone approaches with a light. Even more surprisingly, some of the school's owls use the goalposts as convenient perches during their nightly hunting expeditions, turning the Quidditch pitch into an impromptu owl highway. The commentary box, empty and silent during nighttime hours, holds its own mysteries. Students swear they've heard faint echoes of Lee Jordan's voice drifting down on particularly quiet evenings, as if the box itself remembers every exciting match it has witnessed. The magical amplification system never truly shuts off completely, creating an almost imperceptible hum that you only notice when everything else falls silent. But the real magic happens when fog rolls in from the lake, wrapping the entire stadium in a silvery blanket that makes the floating lanterns look like distant stars. The goalposts disappear into the mist, and the pitch becomes something otherworldly, neither fully part of Hogwarts nor completely separate from it. Just beyond the stadium's enchanted glow, however, lies something that draws students for entirely different reasons during their precious weekend visits to the nearby village. Third-year students at Hogwarts get something most wizarding schools don't offer: weekend trips to Hogsmeade Village. The only all-wizarding settlement in Britain sits just a short walk from the castle grounds, and it's basically every young witch and wizard's first taste of magical freedom. Getting permission requires a signed slip from your parent or guardian. But here's the thing, some students have found creative ways around this requirement over the years. The Weasley twins naturally had their methods, though we won't go into those details right now. The walk to Hogsmeade follows a winding path that cuts through the Scottish countryside. Students bundle up in their house scarves, chatting excitedly as they crunch through fallen leaves or trudge through snow, depending on the season. The air smells different here. Nice cleaner somehow, with hints of wood smoke and something indefinably magical. Honeyduke's sweet shop draws the biggest crowds, and for good reason. Chocolate frogs hop around in their display cases, while Bertie Bott's every flavor beans promise flavors ranging from chocolate to spinach to earwax. The shop's basement connects to a secret passage leading directly back to Hogwarts, though that information stays strictly between certain students and their magical maps. Then there's the fizzing whizzing selection. Fizzing whizbees make you levitate a few inches off the ground for about 20 minutes. Drubal's best blowing gum fills rooms with bluebell-colored bubbles that refuse to pop for half an hour. And don't get started on the pepper imps. Those little devils make steam shoot out of your ears and nose. The Three Broomsticks Inn serves the village's famous butterbeer, a drink that tastes like liquid butterscotch with a warming kick. Madame Rosmerta runs the place with a smile that could charm a dragon. Students crowd around wooden tables, their faces flushed from both the cold outside and the cozy warmth within. The drink leaves a foam mustache that nobody seems to mind wearing. Well, butterbeer isn't actually alcoholic, despite what some students claim. House elves could drink gallons without getting tipsy, but there's something about the combination of sweet taste and magical warmth that makes even the most homesick student feel better. Zonko's joke shop stocks everything a budding prankster could want. Dung bombs that smell exactly like their name suggests. Hiccuping sweets that cause uncontrollable hiccups for hours. Nose-biting teacups that do precisely what you'd expect. The Weasley twins spent considerable pocket money here before starting their own joke empire. The weird part is how the shop owner always seems to know which students are planning something. He'll slip an extra stink pellet into their bag with a knowing wink, as if he's personally invested in the chaos about to unfold back at Hogwarts. Let's not forget the Shrieking Shack, though students can only observe it from a distance. The building sits abandoned on a hill overlooking the village, its windows boarded up and roof sagging. Local legend claims it's the most haunted building in Britain, filled with violent spirits that scream through the night. Of course, the truth behind those screams tells a completely different story, but that's a tale for another time. Scrivenshaft's quill shop might sound boring compared to joke shops and sweet stores, but it holds treasures for the academically minded. Self-inking quills that never run dry. Spell-check quills that correct your grammar as you write. And for the truly ambitious, quills enchanted to write in perfect handwriting while you dictate. Some students discover that certain quills work a bit too well. There are rumors of essays that wrote themselves while their supposed authors slept. The professors have ways of detecting such magical assistance naturally. The post office connects Hogsmeade to the wider wizarding world through hundreds of owls. Students often mail packages home or receive care packages filled with homemade treats and warm socks. The building constantly echoes with hoots and the rustle of feathers as postal owls come and go at all hours. Demulsion Banges handles magical instrument repairs, though most students can't afford their services. Still, it's fascinating to watch through the windows as broken sneakoscopes get realigned or damaged telescopes receive new lenses that can see through walls. As evening approaches, students begin their trek back to Hogwarts. The path looks different in twilight, more mysterious somehow. Lanterns begin twinkling in cottage windows while the castle's lights beckon from across the grounds. The return journey always feels shorter than the trip there. Pockets bulge with sweets and joke items while stomachs stay warm with butterbeer. Stories get shared about funny encounters or embarrassing moments in the village shops. But some students don't take the official path back. Hidden passages and secret routes offer alternative returns to the castle, though these methods require special knowledge and considerable courage to navigate safely through the Scottish night. Walking through Hogwarts at night feels like stepping into a museum where everything might suddenly come alive. The castle doesn't just house students and teachers, it's home to dozens of enchanted statues and magical guardians that most people barely notice during the day. These aren't your typical garden ornaments collecting dust. They're ancient protectors with their own personalities and purposes. The suits of armor scattered throughout the corridors are probably the most famous. Sir Cadogan's armor clanks around looking for dragons to fight. Even though he's been dead for centuries, other armored knights stand perfectly still until someone tries to sneak past after curfew. Then they might turn their helmets to watch, or even clank a warning to nearby portraits. Students have learned to tiptoe extra quietly around them, but here's where it gets interesting. These guardians aren't just decorative. During real danger, like when Death Eaters attacked the school, Professor McGonagall brought the castle's defenses to life with a simple spell. Suddenly, every statue and suit of armor became a warrior ready to defend Hogwarts. The armor marched in formation while stone gargoyles leaped from their perches to join the fight. The founders knew what they were doing when they built this place. Godric Gryffindor's statue stands proudly in the entrance hall, sword at his side, watching over students with stone eyes that seem surprisingly alive. Some swear his expression changes, depending on house point standings. Rowena Ravenclaw's marble figure near the library appears to smile when students discover something particularly clever in their research. Then there are the more unusual guardians scattered throughout the castle. The stone dragons that flank certain doorways aren't just artistic choices, they actually breathe a fine mist when unauthorized people try to enter restricted areas. Not dangerous, but definitely startling enough to make you think twice about breaking rules. The gargoyles deserve special mention, because they're absolutely everywhere, and each one has its own quirks. Some spit water during rainstorms, practical, if you think about it. Others make faces at students who walk by, which is less practical, but infinitely more entertaining. The gargoyle that guards the entrance to Dumbledore's office rotates like a revolving door, but only when you give it the correct password. Usually something sweet related, because even magical stone creatures apparently have a sense of humor about the headmaster's candy obsession. What makes these guardians truly remarkable is their memory. Hogwarts statues have witnessed centuries of student mischief, dramatic events, and quiet moments. They've seen famous witches and wizards as awkward teenagers. They've watched countless love stories unfold in corridor corners. Some statues even seem to recognize family resemblances, offering subtle nods to students whose parents or grandparents once roamed the same halls. The really old statues hold the deepest secrets. Ancient wizards carved protective spells directly into the stone during Hogwarts construction. These aren't just pretty faces, they're part of the castle's immune system. When something truly dangerous threatens the school, these guardians can sense it before any human does. Their eyes might glow, or they might shift positions slightly, giving subtle warnings to those smart enough to pay attention. During quieter times, the statues become almost friendly. Students often find themselves talking to their favorite stone figures, sharing worries about exams or friendship drama. The statues can't talk back, obviously, but there's something comforting about their eternal presence. They've been listening to student problems for generations, and they'll be there for generations more. Some statues have developed reputations among students. There's a particularly stern-looking wizard near the Transfiguration classroom, who supposedly frowns deeper when students haven't done their homework. A cheerful witch statue by the Great Hall entrance seems to radiate good luck before important Quidditch matches. These might be coincidences, but at Hogwarts coincidences often turn out to be something more magical. The castle's defensive capabilities extend beyond individual statues too. Entire walls can shift and change when the school needs protection. Doorways that normally lead to classrooms might suddenly open onto solid stone walls, confusing invaders but never affecting students who belong there. The castle itself seems to know friend from foe. Late at night, when the corridors are mostly empty, you might catch glimpses of these guardians in action. A suit of armor adjusting its stance, a stone face turning slightly toward an interesting sound. Nothing dramatic, just subtle reminders that Hogwarts is always watching, always protecting. The most impressive thing about these magical defenses is how seamlessly they blend into daily life. Students walk past powerful protective magic every day without thinking about it. Makes you wonder what other secrets are hiding in plain sight throughout the castle, waiting patiently to reveal themselves when the time is right. These stone guardians represent something deeper about Hogwarts itself, the idea that some protections work best when they're barely noticed at all. Speaking of barely noticed magic, there's another special place in the castle that most students only dream of accessing. Being a prefect at Hogwarts comes with serious responsibilities. You patrol corridors, enforce rules, and help younger students find their way through the maze of moving staircases. But there's one perk that makes all those late-night patrols worth it: access to the most luxurious bathroom in the entire castle. The prefect's bathroom isn't your ordinary school washroom. Hidden behind a door on the 5th floor, it requires a special password that changes regularly. Only prefects and head boys and girls know the secret word. Well, and anyone clever enough to trick a prefect into revealing it, which has happened more than once in Hogwarts history. Step inside, and your jaw will drop. The room is enormous, easily the size of a small swimming pool. Actually, that's exactly what it looks like: a swimming pool disguised as a bathroom. The centerpiece is a sunken marble tub that could fit at least 20 people comfortably. The walls are made of white marble too, and stained glass windows cast colorful patterns across the water's surface. But here's where things get magical. Around the edge of this massive tub are hundreds of golden taps. Not just any taps. Each one produces something different. Turn one and you get regular water. Turn another and purple bubbles start flowing. There's a tap for pink and blue foam, one for creamy chocolate-scented bubbles, and even one that produces actual hot cocoa if you're feeling adventurous during your bath. The variety is mind-boggling. Some taps release flowers that float on the water's surface. Others add oils that make your skin incredibly soft. There's even a tap that creates tiny golden fish that swim around before dissolving harmlessly. The prefects have spent years figuring out what each tap does, and they guard their secrets carefully. Then there's the practical magic. The water stays at the perfect temperature no matter how long you soak. The bubbles don't pop like normal bubbles, they maintain their shape and scent for hours. The whole room stays warm and steamy without becoming uncomfortable. It's like having a personal spa in the middle of a medieval castle. The weird part is how quiet everything becomes once you're inside. The thick marble walls block out all the usual Hogwarts noise. No creaking staircases, no chattering portraits, no footsteps echoing down corridors. Just the gentle sound of water lapping against the sides of the tub and maybe some soft humming from the magical taps. Some prefects use this sanctuary for serious thinking. Important decisions about house points, disciplinary actions and student disputes get made while soaking in lavender-scented bubbles. Others come here to decompress after particularly stressful nights of catching rule breakers or dealing with homesick first years. Let's not forget the bathroom's most famous moment in recent history. Harry Potter once spent an entire evening here, not because he was a prefect, but because Cedric Diggory gave him the password. He was trying to solve the Golden Eggs riddle for the second task of the Triwizard Tournament. Turns out, you need to listen to that egg underwater to understand what the merpeople are singing about. Smart thinking, really. During his underwater listening session, Harry got some unexpected company. Moaning Myrtle decided to pay a visit, floating around in the bubbles and offering commentary about the Golden Eggs riddle. Not exactly the peaceful bath time most prefects expect, but it worked out in the end. The egg revealed its secret about the lake and the merpeople's song. The bathroom has seen its share of other interesting visitors too. Sometimes house elves sneak in to clean the taps and refresh the magical supplies. Occasionally a portrait figure might peek through from an adjacent frame, though most respect the privacy of the space. There are even rumors that Dumbledore himself used to enjoy evening soaks here during his student days, long before he became headmaster. What makes this place truly special isn't just the luxury, it's the sense of earned privilege. Every prefect remembers their first time discovering this hidden gem. After months of responsibility, late nights and dealing with difficult students, finding this oasis feels like the ultimate reward. The castle seems to understand that its student leaders need somewhere to retreat and recharge. The marble reflects the candlelight beautifully, creating a warm golden glow throughout the room. Steam rises from the water in gentle spirals, carrying whatever scents you've chosen from the various taps. Time seems to slow down here, which is probably another piece of magic built into the room's design. But even in this peaceful sanctuary, Hogwarts mysteries don't completely disappear. Sometimes strange things happen in places of magical relaxation, and the prefects who use this bathroom aren't immune to unexpected discoveries. The castle has ways of revealing its secrets when you least expect them, even during a quiet evening soak surrounded by chocolate-scented bubbles and floating rose petals. Deep beneath Hogwarts, past the moving staircases and whispering portraits, lies something that shouldn't exist. The Chamber of Secrets, hidden for 1,000 years, accessible only to those who speak the language of serpents, Parseltongue. Most students walk right over it every day without knowing. The entrance sits in an abandoned girls' bathroom on the second floor, guarded by Moaning Myrtle, a ghost who died the last time this chamber opened. Talk about ironic security measures. But here's what makes your skin crawl. The chamber wasn't built as some storage room or forgotten classroom. Salazar Slytherin, one of Hogwarts' founders, constructed it as a weapon, a place to house something so deadly that it could purge the school of students he deemed unworthy. Muggle-born students to be exact. The walls descend deeper than anyone expected. Stone serpents carved into every surface, their eyes seeming to follow you as you make your way down. Ancient magic pulses through these corridors, the kind that makes your wand hand shake and your breath come in short gasps. The air itself feels thick with centuries of dormant power. Then there's the main chamber itself. Massive doesn't begin to cover it. Cathedral-high ceilings stretch into darkness above, supported by towering pillars shaped like coiled snakes. The craftsmanship is incredible, yet terrifying, each detail carved with obsessive precision, as if Slytherin knew this place would outlast empires. At the far end stands a statue of Salazar Slytherin himself, 60 feet tall, ancient beyond measure, with a face that could freeze your blood. The statue's mouth can open, and when it does, well, that's when the real nightmare begins. Because living in this chamber, sleeping for decades at a time, was a basilisk, a serpent so massive it could crush a car, so venomous that one drop of its poison could kill a dozen wizards. But the poison wasn't even the worst part. Looking directly into a basilisk's eyes means instant death. No exceptions. The beast lived for nearly 1,000 years down there, fed on rats, bats and whatever else wandered too close to the chamber's entrance, waiting, growing larger, growing hungrier for something more substantial than rodents. Only twice in Hogwarts history has someone actually opened this chamber. Both times, students died. The first opening happened sometime in the distant past, shrouded in mystery and covered up by school officials. The second time was much more recent, much more terrifying. The chamber responds only to Parseltongue commands. You can't fake it, can't learn it from a book, can't trick the ancient magic with clever spells. Either you're born with the ability to speak to serpents, or the chamber remains sealed forever. Which explains why it stayed hidden for so long. Walking through these corridors changes you. The weight of history presses down from every stone. You can almost hear the whispers of past victims, feel the presence of something vast and malevolent that once called this place home.
Oh.
The darkness here isn't just absence of light, it's something alive, something that feeds on fear. What's truly chilling is how perfectly preserved everything remains. No dust, no decay, no signs of age despite centuries underground. The chamber exists outside normal time, suspended by magic so powerful it defies natural law. Every carving looks fresh, every stone fits perfectly, as if Slytherin finished building yesterday. The echo of footsteps bounces strangely here. Sounds carry farther than they should, distorted by the chamber's acoustics into something almost musical, almost hypnotic.
All walking these halls.
You understand how students could be drawn deeper, compelled to explore just a little further, until escape becomes impossible. Near the statue, remnants tell stories of the chamber's most recent awakening. Shed snakeskin the size of a sleeping bag, scratches in the stone where massive coils scraped against walls, evidence of a creature so large it barely fit in spaces designed specifically for it. The chamber holds secrets beyond just the basilisk, ancient texts carved into hidden alcoves, spells that predate modern wizarding lore, artifacts that Slytherin left behind as insurance policies. Some things are better left undiscovered, better left sleeping in the depths where they belong. But the strangest part, the chamber isn't entirely empty anymore. Something else stirs in those depths now, not the basilisk, but something different, something that feeds on the chamber's dark history, and grows stronger with each passing year. The ghosts upstairs might seem friendly compared to what dwells below. Speaking of friendly faces, those cozy common rooms scattered throughout the castle suddenly feel a lot more welcoming than whatever lurks in forgotten spaces, where ancient magic still pulses through the stones. Deep beneath Hogwarts, past the moving staircases, and beyond the reach of most students, lie some of the most powerful magical objects in wizarding history. These aren't your typical classroom supplies or dusty textbooks. We're talking about artifacts so legendary that wars have been fought over them, lives have been lost protecting them, and entire bloodlines have been built around their power. The Sword of Gryffindor stands as perhaps the most famous of these relics. Forged by goblins over 1,000 years ago, this isn't just any old sword gathering dust in a display case. Goblin-made silver never needs cleaning, and actually becomes stronger by absorbing dangerous substances. The blade literally drinks poison and venom, making it more deadly with each encounter. When Harry Potter pulled this sword from the sorting hat during his second year, it had already absorbed basilisk venom, one of the most destructive substances known to wizardkind. Makes you wonder what else it might have encountered over the centuries, right? But here's where things get interesting. The sword doesn't just sit around waiting for a worthy Gryffindor to claim it. This thing has a mind of its own, appearing exactly when it's needed most. Locked away in the headmaster's office most of the time, it somehow finds its way to brave students in their darkest moments. Some say Fawkes the Phoenix delivers it. Others believe the magic of Hogwarts itself guides the blade to where courage is most needed. Then there's Hufflepuff's cup, though its story takes a much darker turn. Originally belonging to Helga Hufflepuff herself, this golden cup could multiply food and drink, pretty handy for feeding hundreds of hungry students. The cup's badger engravings would actually move and play when the vessel was filled with something particularly delicious. Unfortunately, this cheerful artifact became twisted into something far more sinister when Tom Riddle got his hands on it. Ravenclaw's diadem tells an equally tragic tale. Known as the Lost Diadem, this delicate silver crown was said to enhance the wisdom of anyone who wore it. The inscription reads, "Wit beyond measure is man's greatest treasure," and students used to whisper that wearing it could help you ace any exam. Helena Ravenclaw, the founder's daughter, stole it from her mother and fled to Albania. The ghost we know as the Grey Lady, that's Helena herself, forever wandering Hogwarts in guilt over her theft. Well, Slytherin's locket might be the most unsettling of all the Founder's artifacts. This ornate golden locket, decorated with an elaborate S in green gems, possessed the ability to influence minds and corrupt hearts. Even before it became a Horcrux, the locket had an unsavory reputation. Students reported feeling unusually angry or jealous after handling it, and several mysterious disappearances were linked to the artifact over the centuries. What makes these objects truly remarkable isn't just their individual powers, it's how they reflect their creator's values. Gryffindor's sword appears for the brave, rewarding those who face their fears head-on. Hufflepuff's cup, nourished and sustained, embodying the caring nature of its maker. Ravenclaw's diadem, elevated knowledge and learning above all else. And Slytherin's locket, it revealed the ambitious and sometimes dark desires lurking in human hearts. The weird part is how these artifacts seem to choose their moments. They don't respond to just anyone with magical ability, or even pure intentions. Each item appears to test potential users, judging their character against the standards set by the Founders themselves. Try to claim Gryffindor's sword without true courage, and you'll find yourself empty-handed. Attempt to use Ravenclaw's diadem for petty knowledge or cheating, and its wisdom remains locked away. Hogwarts doesn't just house these relics, it protects them with layers upon layers of magical security. Ancient ward spells, protective enchantments, and guardian spirits all work together to keep these powerful objects from falling into the wrong hands. The castle itself seems to sense when someone with ill intent approaches, sealing passages and redirecting would-be thieves into harmless dead ends. Let's not forget the other historical artifacts scattered throughout the castle. Medieval wizard chess sets that play matches by themselves, ancient spellbooks that rewrite themselves when new magic is discovered, and even a few items whose original purposes have been completely forgotten. Some classroom cabinets hold objects so old that even the professors aren't quite sure what they do anymore. These Founders' objects remind every student that Hogwarts isn't just a school, it's a living museum of magical history. Each artifact carries the hopes, dreams, and sometimes nightmares of wizards who came before. They're proof that magic items don't just hold power, they hold memory, personality, and purpose that can outlast their creators by centuries. But all this talk of powerful magical objects and ancient artifacts makes you curious about the quieter magic happening around the castle, doesn't it? Sometimes the most enchanting discoveries happen in the most unexpected places. When the castle sleeps and most students dream in their four-poster beds, something magical happens in the greenhouses. The glass structures that dot Hogwarts grounds come alive with activity that would make your Muggle garden centre look like a toy shop. Professor Sprout doesn't just tend to ordinary roses and daisies here, she's dealing with plants that bite back, literally. The greenhouses stretch in a neat row, numbered 1 through 3, with each building housing increasingly dangerous specimens. Greenhouse 1 might fool you into thinking it's normal. Sure, there are some unusual purple flowers and vines that grow a bit too quickly, but nothing that would make you run screaming. Then you step into Greenhouse 2, and things get interesting fast. Mandrakes sit in their pots like grumpy green babies, and they scream if you so much as bump their table. The sound can knock you unconscious, which makes midnight watering a real challenge. Professor Sprout keeps special earmuffs nearby for a reason. The weird part is, these screaming plants are actually incredibly valuable for healing potions. Sometimes the most annoying things turn out to be the most useful. But Greenhouse 3, that's where the real monsters live. Venomous tentacula wave their spiky appendages at anyone who gets too close, while Devil's Snare lurks in darker corners, ready to strangle unsuspecting students. The greenhouse practically hums with magical energy after dark, when many of these plants become most active. Professor Sprout often makes her rounds well past midnight, armed with thick dragonhide gloves and a no-nonsense attitude. She talks to her plants like they're misbehaving children. Now, settle down, she'll whisper to a particularly aggressive fanged geranium. The plants actually seem to respond to her voice, which is either incredibly sweet or slightly terrifying depending on how you look at it. The scents drifting from these greenhouses create a complex perfume that changes throughout the night. Early evening brings the sweet smell of honking daffodils mixed with the earthy aroma of fresh soil. By midnight, stranger odors emerge. Some plants release their most potent fragrances only under starlight, creating combinations that can make your head spin or, in some cases, put you to sleep where you stand. Certain flowers bloom exclusively at night, opening their petals to catch moonbeams like silver collectors gathering rare coins. The moonflower unfurls only when the moon reaches its peak, glowing with an ethereal light that makes the entire greenhouse look like it's underwater. Students walking past the windows sometimes stop and stare, mesmerized by the otherworldly glow. Then there are the plants that Professor Sprout uses for her more advanced classes. Bubotuber pus might sound disgusting, but it's essential for treating acne. The plants look like giant black slugs, and harvesting their secretions requires timing, patience, and a strong stomach. The smell alone could knock a troll off its feet. The greenhouse heating systems work through magic. Naturally, charmed braziers maintain perfect temperatures for tropical specimens, while cooling charms keep the Arctic moss from melting into green puddles. The climate control spells create microclimates within each building, so you might feel tropical heat near the fire seeds while shivering next to the ice roses just 3 steps away. Students occasionally sneak out to the greenhouses after hours, though they rarely stay long. The combination of strange sounds, moving shadows, and plants that seem to watch you creates an atmosphere that's equal parts fascinating and unnerving. Some brave souls come looking for ingredients for their own potion experiments, but Professor Sprout has protective spells that make unauthorized harvesting nearly impossible. The windows of these greenhouses fog up with condensation from all the magical transpiration happening inside. When you peer through the glass from outside, you see shapes moving in the mist that might be Professor Sprout tending her charges, or might be the plants themselves shifting position when they think no one's looking. House elves sometimes assist with the more dangerous specimens, their natural magic providing extra protection against the more aggressive flora. They move between the rows of plants with surprising confidence, immune to some of the magical effects that would send students running for the castle. The magical ecosystem inside each greenhouse creates its own weather patterns. Tiny clouds form near the ceiling of Greenhouse 3, occasionally producing gentle rain showers that the tropical plants absolutely love. Lightning bugs that are actually tiny sprites zip between the leaves, their light creating moving constellations among the foliage. As dawn approaches, the nocturnal plants begin settling down for their daytime rest, but the scents they've released throughout the night continue drifting toward the castle. These herbal fragrances mix with the morning air, creating the distinctive smell that wafts through Hogwarts corridors and reminds everyone that even the plants here are touched by magic. Speaking of morning scents, there's another place in the castle where aromas tell their own story of magical achievement and forgotten legends. Most students rush past the trophy room during the day, barely glancing at the gleaming cases that line the walls, but at night, that's when this place becomes something entirely different. The moonlight streaming through tall windows catches every polished surface, turning ordinary awards into something magical. The trophy room holds more history than any other single space at Hogwarts. Well, except maybe Dumbledore's office. Every Quidditch Cup winner since 1473 has their name etched somewhere in here. Every head boy and head girl. Every student who achieved something worth remembering. The cases stretch from floor to ceiling, packed with centuries of achievement. Here's what gets interesting though. These aren't just dusty old awards sitting forgotten on shelves. Each trophy, each medal, each gleaming cup holds a story that shaped Hogwarts. Tom Riddle's special award for services to the school sits in one case. Makes you wonder what the school board would think if they knew what their star student became. Right. The Quidditch trophies alone could fill a small museum. Gryffindor's 7 consecutive wins from 1991 to 1997 dominate one entire wall. Charlie Weasley's name appears so often you'd think they misspelled it at first, but the real treasures hide between the obvious ones. Academic awards for subjects that don't even exist anymore. Dueling championships from when students could legally hex each other for sport. Then there's the case that once held something far more dangerous than any trophy. The Mirror of Erised spent time here, disguised among the awards. Students would sneak in at midnight, hoping to catch a glimpse of their deepest desires reflected back at them. Dumbledore had to move it eventually. Too many students were losing sleep over what they saw. The Goblet of Fire made its temporary home here too. When the Triwizard Tournament returned to Hogwarts, that blue-white flame danced behind protective enchantments waiting to choose champions. Students lined up for hours just to stare at it. Some brave enough to cross the age line got sprouted beards for their trouble. The twins learned that lesson the hard way. Every night at exactly midnight, something remarkable happens. The trophies begin to clean themselves, not with house elf magic or student detention scrubbing. Pure enchantment takes over. Silver begins to gleam brighter, gold develops a deeper shine, crystal becomes so clear it almost disappears. The whole process takes about 20 minutes, and the soft glow from each award creates the most beautiful light show in the castle. But here's the weird part. Some trophies refuse to stay clean. The Slytherin house cup from certain years develops tarnish within hours. A few academic awards seem to attract dust no matter how much magic polishes them. Students have theories about why this happens, but the real reason stays locked away with Hogwarts' other mysteries. The really old awards tell stories through more than just their inscriptions. Touch the 1472 Quidditch Cup, and you might hear faint cheering from centuries past. Lean too close to Merlin's Order of Merit Award, and you'll smell something like old parchment and starlight. These aren't just decorations. They're magical artifacts that absorb the emotions and energy from their moments of glory. Late-night visitors sometimes report hearing whispers from the cases, not ghost voices exactly, but something like the echo of acceptance speeches and victory celebrations. The room holds on to those moments of pure happiness and achievement. During particularly quiet nights, you might catch fragments of long-dead students celebrating their triumphs. One case holds awards that never get mentioned in Hogwarts. A history, dark arts defense championships from the days when students learned more offensive spells than defensive ones. Outstanding achievement in practical curses. Advanced hexwork excellence. These awards remind everyone that Hogwarts once taught a much different curriculum. The newest additions shine brightest of all. Recent House Cup wins still carry the energy of fresh celebration. Academic awards from last term practically glow with pride. These newer trophies seem eager to prove themselves worthy of standing alongside centuries of achievement. Security here goes beyond simple locking charms. Try to steal even the smallest medal, and you'll find yourself stuck to the floor until morning. The cases themselves are warded against everything from exploding snap damage to dragonfire. Makes sense when you're protecting nearly 1,000 years of wizarding achievement. Students serving detention here often report the strangest assignment possible. They're asked to polish awards that clean themselves. Seems pointless until you realize the real punishment isn't the work. It's spending hours surrounded by other people's success while thinking about whatever landed you in trouble. The trophy room connects to the Great Hall through a narrow corridor lined with portraits of former award winners. These painted champions love nothing more than offering advice to current students. Some of that guidance proves helpful. Most of it involves outdated Quidditch strategies or study techniques that stopped working decades ago. While the trophy room celebrates past achievements, just down the hall lie spaces where students create the memories that might earn future recognition. Looking up at Hogwarts ceilings is basically like having the world's most expensive skylight, except it never breaks and the weather is always exactly what you need. The Great Hall gets all the attention with its famous starry ceiling, but that's just the beginning. Scattered throughout the castle, other rooms hide their own magical overhead surprises that most students never even notice. The divination classroom sits at the top of North Tower, where Professor Trelawney teaches her often questionable predictions. Her ceiling shifts between misty forests and rolling storm clouds, depending on what mystical mood she's trying to create. Sometimes students swear they can smell pine needles or hear distant thunder. The enchantment responds to her lessons, which explains why the ceiling looks particularly dramatic whenever she's predicting someone's doom. Again, then there's the defense against the dark arts classroom, where the ceiling changes based on whoever's teaching that year. Lupin's ceiling showed gentle moonlit nights. Umbridge somehow made it display sickeningly pink clouds. Mad-Eye Moody's version flickered with lightning that made everyone jumpy. The room seems to absorb each professor's personality, creating atmospheric magic that either helps or completely distracts from the lesson. But here's where it gets really interesting. The ceiling enchantments aren't just pretty decorations, they're connected to the castle's deeper magic. During dangerous times like when Death Eaters approached the school, these magical ceilings would darken and swirl with warning storms. Students learned to read the overhead weather as a kind of early warning system. Clear skies meant peace. Gathering clouds meant trouble brewing. The herbology greenhouses have their own version of enchanted ceilings, though they're made of glass instead of pure magic. Professor Sprout charmed them to filter sunlight perfectly for whatever plants need growing. Dangerous specimens get dim, mysterious lighting that makes them look even more threatening. Healing plants bask under warm golden rays that seem to make everything grow twice as fast. What's really clever about these enchantments is how they affect student behavior without anyone realizing it. Astronomy classes held under magically clear, star-filled ceilings help students focus better on their constellation charts. Potions lessons in the dungeons with their low stone ceilings create exactly the right atmosphere for brewing mysterious concoctions. Even the hospital wing has a gently clouded ceiling that changes to match whatever healing magic Madame Pomfrey is working. The magic behind these ceilings comes from ancient spells woven into Hogwarts' very foundations. Each enchanted ceiling connects to the castle's awareness of its surroundings. They're not just showing fake weather, they're interpreting the magical atmosphere around the school and translating it into something students can see and feel. When the forbidden forest grows restless, classroom ceilings might show darker skies. When house elves are particularly happy in the kitchens, the great hall's stars seem to twinkle brighter. Some rooms have ceilings that respond to the students themselves. The room of requirement creates whatever overhead atmosphere fits your needs. Tropical sunset for a beach party, snowy sky for winter practice, or simple blue sky for basic comfort. Advanced transfiguration classes sometimes feature ceilings that demonstrate the spells being taught, showing transformations happening in slow motion among painted clouds. Let's not forget the practical magic involved here. These enchantments never malfunction during important exams or feasts. They're weatherproof in ways that would make Muggle architects weep with envy. No leaks during actual rainstorms. No fading from sunlight. No cracks from age. The magic maintains itself, drawing power from the same ancient sources that keep the moving staircases moving, and the portraits talking. The most mysterious ceiling belongs to the headmaster's office, though few students ever see it. Dumbledore's ceiling reportedly showed the night sky from anywhere in the world he chose to observe. Sometimes it displayed the view from above other magical schools, or the stars over places where former students had travelled. After his death, the ceiling went dark for months before McGonagall's practical Scottish sensibilities turned it into a simple, dignified starfield. During the Battle of Hogwarts, every enchanted ceiling in the castle reflected the chaos outside. Storm clouds gathered, lightning flashed, and some say the Great Hall's ceiling showed shooting stars that were actually spells flying across the grounds. The magic responded to the intense emotions and danger, becoming part of the castle's defense rather than just decoration. What makes these magical ceilings truly special is how they connect indoor learning to the larger magical world. Students studying inside stone walls never lose touch with the sky, weather, or natural rhythms. The enchantments remind everyone that magic flows between inside and outside, between human knowledge and natural forces. Weather outside might be miserable, but inside Hogwarts, the magical ceilings create exactly the atmosphere needed for learning, healing, or simply feeling at home. They're like having the perfect indoor climate, controlled not by thermostats but by centuries of accumulated wisdom about what makes magic work best. Speaking of perfect indoor environments, the castle's ability to create ideal conditions extends far beyond just overhead views. Our morning at Hogwarts arrives like magic itself. The sun creeps over the Scottish Highlands, painting the castle walls gold and amber. Students might think they know this place after months of midnight adventures and secret passages, but dawn reveals something entirely different. The castle lawn stretches like a green carpet toward the lake and forbidden forest. It's perfectly manicured, which seems impossible given how massive it is. Well, house elves work through the night with enchanted tools that trim every blade of grass to exactly the right height. They sweep the stone steps leading to the main entrance until they gleam. By the time students wake up, every leaf has been cleared, every pathway pristine. Early risers discover something most students never see. The sky transforms from deep purple to navy blue, then shifts to brilliant orange and gold. The lake mirrors these colors perfectly, creating a double sunrise that takes your breath away. And here's the thing, watching this from the castle windows feels completely different than stepping outside to experience it. The windows throughout Hogwarts begin to catch the morning light, turning the entire structure into something that sparkles. Hundreds of glass panels reflect the sunrise, making the castle look like it's made of captured sunbeams. The effect only lasts about 20 minutes, but those 20 minutes are pure magic. House elves aren't the only early workers at Hogwarts. Professor McGonagall often walks the grounds at dawn, checking for any overnight magical mishaps. She's discovered everything from jinxed garden gnomes to accidentally enlarged pumpkins from the greenhouse. Students who think their late-night spell practice goes unnoticed are usually wrong. The evidence shows up at sunrise. Then there's the morning ritual of the owls. The owlery empties as hundreds of school owls take flight, creating a spectacular scene against the dawn sky. They spread out like a living cloud, some heading to distant villages, others just stretching their wings after a night of rest. The sight makes even the most homesick student smile. But here's what catches most people off guard: the morning sounds. Hogwarts at dawn isn't silent. The castle itself seems to wake up with gentle creaking sounds as ancient stones adjust to the changing temperature, portraits yawn and stretch in their frames. The moving staircases shift into their morning positions with soft grinding noises that echo through empty corridors. Let's not forget about the creatures stirring in the forbidden forest. Centaurs emerge to study the morning sky for omens and signs. Unicorns drink from hidden streams that sparkle in the early light. Even the more dangerous residents seem peaceful at this hour, as if dawn creates a temporary truce in the magical wilderness. The Great Hall transforms during these early hours too. House elves set up breakfast with military precision, but there's artistry in how they arrange everything. Steam rises from porridge pots, fresh bread appears in perfect baskets, and fruit arranges itself in colorful displays. The enchanted ceiling shows the real sky outside, so students eating early breakfast get to watch the sunrise while they eat. Morning light reveals details about the castle that artificial lighting hides. Ancient carvings in stone walls become visible when sunlight hits them at just the right angle. Some of these carvings tell stories about the founders or mark locations of old magical events. Students walking to early classes often stop mid-step when they notice something they've passed hundreds of times but never really seen. The lake takes on a completely different personality at sunrise. The giant squid surfaces more often in the early morning calm, creating gentle ripples that catch the light. Occasionally, merpeople can be spotted near the shore, though they usually disappear as soon as they notice human observers. The water looks so peaceful that it's hard to believe it hides such mysterious depths, and the weird part is how sunrise affects the castle's magic itself. Spells seem stronger in the morning light. Potions brewing in the dungeons often show better results when prepared at dawn. Even student homework performs better when completed during these early hours. There's something about new daylight that enhances magical energy throughout Hogwarts. Students who make the effort to wake up early discover they're joining an exclusive club. They nod to each other in the corridors, sharing the secret knowledge of what their school really looks like when most people are still sleeping. These early risers often become the most connected to Hogwarts itself, understanding the castle's rhythms in ways their classmates never will. As more students begin stirring in their dormitories, the quiet magic of dawn starts to fade. Voices replace the peaceful sounds of awakening stone and settling timbers. The day's chaos slowly builds toward the familiar bustle of classes, meals and magical mayhem. But for those precious early moments, Hogwarts belongs entirely to the sunrise, the house elves, and the few students wise enough to witness daily magic that costs nothing but